This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
By popular demand, Place to Be Nation Wrestling returns to the Dirty South for Talk'n WCW, an episodic wrestler showcase designed to educate, evaluate, and entertain, with matches spanning the intimate stage of Techwood Studios to the heights of Space Mountain. Talk'n WCW presents the best, worst, and most surreal offerings from World Championship Wrestling. So cast your gaze to the Turnertron with hosts Jennifer Smith, Tim Capel, and Greg Phillips.
Place to Be Nation, welcome to another edition of Talk'n WCW. I'm Jennifer Smith. I'm here with the Steven Seagal to my Michael Caine. It's Tim Capel. How you doing, Tim?
Thank you for that, Jenny. I'm wearing my black turtleneck, so you cannot see how fat I am while I climb this mountain.
Yes, that works. Thank you. How fat are you now, though? Pretty fat, right?
Pretty fat, yeah. I'm fat!
You can't climb any mountains. Who are you kidding?
No, or fit in any turtlenecks for that. Who else do we have? I feel like we've already exhausted our Steven Seagal movie knowledge here with all of his villains and his great films. So we'll just have to bring in our third man. His seat is much higher than ours. It's Greg Phillips. Greg, what's up, buddy?
Oh, thanks, guys. I like to think that I am the Tommy Lee Jones to your Steven Seagal.
There we have it.
I have a leather jacket with embroidered letters on the back of it for some reason, and I will engage you in a knife fight that will end with you plunging the knife into my skull and bashing me repeatedly into a computer deck.
I don't care.
Oh, what are we doing? All right.
We're doing the Steven Seagal cast, right?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. That's got to be a thing, right?
Talk'n Seagal.
Talk'n Seagal.
Out for a kill, out for justice, kill for justice, justice for a kill. All of his great movies. Exit wounds, entry wounds.
Hard justice. Justice gets hard.
Flesh wounds.
The Glimmer Man. What the fuck was the Glimmer Man?
Now we do need a podcast about Steven Seagal.
We do. Well, that's a great segue into a Glimmer Man we are going to talk about here tonight on Talk'n WCW, because the wrestler, he was chosen by me, wasn't he? It is Man Called Sting.
Man Called Sting. Man Called Sting. Yeah. Woo!
I knew Greg was going to be hyped for this.
I did too, and I sort of took this bullet for Greg. Not that I don't like Sting or think that he's not a worthy subject here for Talk'n WCW, but I know that Greg, he could be accused of having perhaps not so much Sting ass, but Sting bias.
Yes.
And if he chose Sting, everyone's going to go, oh, look at that, Greg Phillips, he chose Sting. Well, of course he chose Sting. I mean, that mark, Greg Phillips, such a Sting mark, Greg Phillips. Well, I chose Sting. So I'm going to take that heat right off you, Greg.
Well, I appreciate it, too.
You can come into this with your head held high, knowing that this is a very honest podcast experience for you.
Yes,
no bias.
I was a little stinger, and I became a medium stinger, and now I'm a big stinger. Mm-hmm. And you know why I'm such a big stinger? Everybody wondering out there, and Tim, I'm so glad that you fell on this grenade for me, so that I wouldn't have to deal with all the Richards on Twitter tweeting me at JR's BBQ, telling me, "Oh, you're such a Sting mark. Oh, you're this." You know what? Sting does this. He does that. He is big as a bull, and he's quick as a cat. So you all can go suck it as far as I'm concerned that don't like the stinger.
Stick it. You go stick it.
Stick it. Or put it in your stinger pipe and smoke it, brother. As the Hulkster once said.
Glad we're getting all this in early, to
Yeah,
be
me
honest
too.
with you.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a lot more where that came from, though.
I'm going to make you say you love Sting even though you don't.
That's right, Jenny. You hear that?
I might surprise you tonight. I'm just saying.
Wow.
All right. Well.
So I didn't preface it with a,
No.
huge mistake.
You sure didn't. Sting, though, kind of hit the scene in the late 80s, still in Jim Crockett Promotions, right? But his big coming out party was at that inaugural Clash of the Champions, doing the Broadway against Flair, that great 45-minute match. I guess it's longer watching on television with commercials and all at the time. But that's that's always been my issue with Sting, as someone who wouldn't I wouldn't consider him like a fan favorite of mine at all. Mm-hmm. He's always been like the card-carrying WCW through and through, beating heart of the promotion. I always had that appreciation for him, but he wasn't a personal favorite. I can definitely see him as the WCW equivalent or answer to Hulk Hogan, certainly like in the early 90s, as that big national star that they wanted to get behind. But my thing was just, he seemed like he peaked so early in that match with Flair that is so beloved, and that none of us chose tonight. It's another one of those, we kind of have to mention it, even though nobody picked it, because it is so obvious. But I really do love that match. It's probably my favorite Sting match there from that first Clash. And it's so funny because he wasn't, as legend has it, he wasn't really meant to get over there. It was just sort of supposed to be this showcase, cool exhibition match. Of course, you're going to get a great showing out of Flair, bell to bell, going something that with that kind of length that they really give it some room to stretch out. And the question is Sting going to be able to hang with him, or is it going to be like a broomstick situation, Flair kind of wrestling himself? And Sting very much kept up his end of the bargain in that match, and kind of ended up getting over by accident as much as he did. Because as you should know, I guess, the feud at the time was more like Flair Luger. They're still kind of trying to run with that program, or kind of that program hasn't peaked yet, we'll put it that way. And Sting is just sort of this guy who's thrown in there to have hopefully a good match, and very much steals the show and kind of steals a lot of Luger's thunder. Greg, did you want to comment on that match at all, or any of the just early memories of Sting that you might have?
Yeah, so I think for Lex Luger, it was really bad timing for Sting to come along, because Sting was this guy that came along who was a better worker, had more natural charisma, more athleticism in the ring. Luger did a lot of things very well too. I'm not trying to bury old Flexi Lexi there, but Sting was just a more dynamic top babyface type guy, and I think it was pretty apparent from that first match with Flair. My earliest memories of Sting, he was probably, after Hogan, he was probably the first wrestler that really that I fell in love with, that just like jumped off the screen at me. I would have been like 4 when the first Clash happened, and I can't say that I so much remember watching that match live, but I remember watching the build up to that match live, like on TBS Superstation, 6:05 Eastern, Saturday nights, and watching as a 4-year-old kid. I've said this before on social media. As a 4-year-old, Sting was like a superhero come to life. He was doing moves that I had never seen before in wrestling. I remember him doing a jumping off the top turnbuckle to the outside. I remember him even more impressively running. I had never seen a dude do the running plancha before, and he runs and he jumps over the top rope, doesn't touch the rope, and lands on one of the Road Warriors, I think is my memory of it. And it just blew my mind as a kid. He was like the comic book characters that I had seen come to life in a way that really nobody in the WWF was, because there weren't guys there doing the kind of stuff that Sting was doing at that time. And so for me, he was my dude, like from pretty much day one that I saw him. The face paint, the spiked blonde hair, the fact that he could do high-flying moves and power moves. He was my favorite from the first time I saw him. And I stayed a fan of his my whole life, basically. Years later, I would develop my affinity for Bret Hart, but I was always a diehard Sting mark from 1987 or 88 when I first saw him as a really young kid and all the way through. And if you were a WCW fan in the Deep South at that time, Sting was the guy. Like, people can retroactively say what they want, but Sting was the most popular wrestler in WCW, more so than Luger, always, at least in my experience. Sting was the guy that was, when he came out in the arenas, and I went to a few house shows when I was little, the roof would come unglued for him in a way that it didn't for anybody else. He got the quote unquote Hogan pop when he came out, and there weren't a lot of guys in WCW ever that got that kind of a reaction. So for me, Sting was the wrestler of my youth, and Sting versus Ric Flair was kind of the feud of my youth. They wrestled 1,000 times probably, and I never saw them have what I would call a bad match with each other.
Very good. Jenny, did you have a kind of first impression when you found yourself being drawn to WCW those many moons ago?
Well, it's funny because I think that I'm a very weird person in that I like heels. I like weird things and strange things. Sting has always been so, like, bubblegum, like...
Yeah.
Like, whitewashed and, like, perfect and, like, amazing, and that just makes me not want to like him. So, all of that being said, just to say that as far as the actual wrestler, I shouldn't have had an opinion on him. I just had an opinion about my impression of him.
Yeah, the character and the
right,
presentation.
Yeah, so... I would make like jokes about Sting or whatever, but without really giving him a chance to win me over, which is why, even though I bitched about it, and I'm glad that we did this.
Okay.
And I was happy that I got a chance to sit down and watch these matches, because I think that my mind has kind of been changed on Sting. So.
Woo!
We'll get there, but it was an interesting day watching the progression of Sting, and the matches that we chose was like 3 very distinct looks from him, and also types of matches from him. So it was a very good education for me in one day.
I'll just say we have managed to represent all 3 of Sting's major looks in WCW without really trying.
Nope.
So I can't say that
the only one we missed was Wolfpack Sting, but
well,
some things are better left unsaid.
Yeah.
But that statement from Jenny warms me to the very cockles and subcockles of my
subcockles. Yeah. I was warmed by what you said, Jenny, about being drawn towards heels, because that just feels like such a Southern wrestling fan thing. You just sort of, I think it is, that you just took to right away.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's in our blood or something.
Yeah.
we just love.
It's our Southern nature.
It is.
We like the rowdy ones.
Our ancestors was heels, and that's who we like.
Well, Greg doesn't, though.
No. I like heels too. No, so my deal was I liked a lot of wrestlers when I was a kid, heels and baby faces. But the weird thing is that in WCW, I liked I liked Sting, but I also liked Ric Flair. I just liked him. Like he made me laugh. Mm-hmm. So I liked Flair because he made me laugh. In WWF, my favorite guys were generally, other than Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior, were heels. Like I loved, like Mr. Perfect was legit probably my favorite wrestler in WWF at one point, and he was, you know, obviously a dickhead heel, and I always liked Rick Rude because he was funny, and I liked all the people that were funny that would make me laugh, and then, you know, I liked the superhero baby faces because I was a kid, but yeah, there was also that attraction to the heel. I never hated the heels that I hated were the guys that I thought were bad wrestlers when I was a kid, like Yokozuna, the big fat guys and everything. I never liked them. I never liked the Warlord and people like that, you know. Yeah. But you know, it is very much a Southern thing to get behind the bad boys, the dudes that are out there kind of being underhanded but being really cool in the process. Because baby faces, let's be honest, in wrestling, and it's still true to this day, it is very hard for a babyface to be cool.
Yeah,
it's really hard. They have to work at it.
And that's what's so telling about Sting is, number one, he is not a heel. He is a babyface through and through, and he is very much not from the South. So for him to connect with Southern crowds primarily, the way that he did, especially in his early career, credit to him. I think people really sell him short. I know the argument, well, you know, Sting was never really a draw. Like he never really made the company money. Well, WCW only really made money like in 1 year of its existence. So
can't really hang that on Sting.
Who the hell was? Yeah, I mean, you got Flair going back, you know, selling out the Omni and Greensboro and all these places. Just on that loop, but just as a national concern, I mean, who did they really?
Nobody. You know, they didn't. And when Sting was on top, when he won the title in 1990, beat Ric Flair at Great American Bash in a great match as well. But he never had any opponents. I mean, he feuded with the Black Scorpion, for God's sake. Right. He feuded with Sid Vicious before he was the Sid that we all know and hopefully love today. And he feuded with, no one else. That was it. The Black Scorpion and Sid.
Right. He didn't have a whole lot of long-term rivals and rivalries other than Flair. Like he and Flair would always come together and go their separate ways, come back together, and
really they had the same problem. Yeah, because like nobody was drawing for WCW because it was such a promotionally it was such a mess in terms of how it was organized. But you know, Flair always ran out of opponents, so he'd have to go back to Sting too. So it was
exactly
the same thing over and over again. Davey Boy Smith getting fooked on crack cocaine in 1993. You know, a lot of stuff going on in WCW.
Sting, I'm fooked.
Well, let's get to it then, Greg. I think that you picked this first match.
Yes,
from
I sure did.
Starrcade '92, Sting versus Vader, the King of Cable match. I'm so excited.
And this is from the Omni.
Yeah.
Good match from the good old Omni in Atlanta, the shithole Omni that everyone loves and misses and seemed to kind of hate at the time. But boy, I guess, you know, you look back and it all looks a little bit shinier and brighter. Mm-hmm. There's a glimmer to it, right?
Yes, and the glimmer of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was beautiful.
Thank you. I learned it from the Glimmer Man.
Very good. And this is where we have to throw out everything we just said about Sting not having a lot of long-term rivalries because this was one of the few feuds that he had was with Vader. They had already had a match at Great American Bash in '92, a very one-sided affair where Vader handily took the title off of Sting. And was this their second match? Had they done anything on TV between?
They actually had a match before Great American Bash on TV. Where they did an angle. Actually, it might have been two. In fact, they did an angle where Vader broke Sting's ribs, and that led into Great American Bash '92.
All of them?
I don't know.
Every single one of them.
In those days, we were just told broken ribs. Sort of like any move that involves the foot is a martial arts technique of some kind.
We're going to see that.
Yes. Unorthodox martial arts techniques. And so, but they had a match because it's on. It was on the Sting collection on the network. They had a match in like March of '92 that was kind of a throwaway match that I think ended in a schmozz finish with interference and everything. Then they have the Great American Bash match. Think of it as like in Nightfall, the first time that Bane encounters. I'm getting into the.
No, you're fine.
The first time that Bane encounters Batman, and they see each other, and they might even, I can't remember if they tussle just for a moment, and then they separate, and then they come back to it later, and that's when Bane breaks his back. And of course, now this is the first time, though, I believe, since Great American Bash, that Sting is going to get his hands on the man that so dominantly took the title from him, the man that humiliated him in front of all the little stingers, the man that made 8-year-old Greg Phillips cry in his living room watching the update, seeing that Sting had been manhandled by this monster. So can Sting overcome the odds? Can Sting overcome his own fears, his own inhibitions, his own doubts about whether he can beat this man? Can Sting step up and become the hero that all of us kids out there in the early 90s with our spiked mullets that we wanted him to be? And the answer, ladies and gentlemen, is yes, he can.
Well, that is because he traveled to the Far East, and his back that was broken by Vader has been healed now by Dr. Chandra. Good old Chandra.
Yes, just don't run afoul of her evil brother, Benedict Asp.
Oh man, yeah. Oof, Benedict Asp. Portrayed in WCW by Jake the Snake Roberts, I believe. We're getting off. Greg, I think you said before that this is your favorite of the Sting Vader matches. Is that true?
That is correct. It is my favorite of the Sting Vader matches, and the reasons are multitude. First of all, I love all their matches. All their matches, no exaggeration. All their matches are very good with each other. Even the lesser ones like Slamboree '94. All of their matches are good as a baseline. Most of their matches with each other are great. They just had insane chemistry from almost the first time they locked up. But this match is great for a lot of reasons. Like, to me, I talked about the Great American Bash 92 match kind of being their Nightfall, Bane breaks Batman's back. Well, this is like if Nightfall had a much better payoff than what it had. This is the hero has been broken, and I'm a sucker for a conclusion story. I'm a sucker for the third act, whether it be Return of the Jedi, Dark Knight Rises, whatever. I like seeing the hero come back and overcome. And in this case, Sting has been broken, he's been beaten, he's been battered, he's been victimized, and he comes back from the blood and the sweat and the vomit, and he picks himself up off the ground, and he comes in here and he confronts Vader, and he, even in the early going of this match, he has to be going through doubts because Vader overwhelms him at the beginning. He's just throwing him around like a child, pushing him down and peppering him with Sting's hitting him with these beautiful shots, just tagging him right in the face, and Vader just looks at him and says no pain, like he's impenetrable. But you can see Sting have to dig down and dig down within himself and really put up one of the most valiant, heroic babyface fights that I've seen in a match. It is a fight. This is a fight from opening bell to closing bell, and he has to get a little lucky along the way. It's not like he can just rely on his same old tricks to beat Vader. This is a different animal than he's ever encountered before. But by the end of this match, even though he did get a little bit lucky, even though he did have to rely on cunning and guile, you get the idea that now Sting knows he can beat this guy. And it lets you know that somewhere they're going to meet again down the line. And you know that now Sting is going to have that demon slayed in the back of his mind that I can beat this guy. I can slay this beast if the time comes. And it's gonna suck. And even in his post-match promo in this match, I'm getting way ahead of myself here, but Sting coming out and talking about what a butt kicking he takes in this bout, and I don't know, the whole thing comes together. The execution is flawless. The contact, the physicality is so intense here and so stiff. Sting actually busts Vader open in this match. and he's actually talked about that in some interviews in the past. I remember the WCW documentary they did on him in '99. He talked about when he wrestled Vader, he felt like he had to tame him because Vader would eat you alive in the ring. And kind of take liberties. And so I think this was his version of taming him a little bit and saying, look, I'm going to give it as good as I get it. So it was just a masterpiece to me. The strength also, I think this may have been one of the first times I ever saw Sting give Vader the German suplex.
Oh, Lord.
And I mean, I must have jumped out of my chair even watching it earlier today. Like, it's such an impressive move and such an impressive spot. I also thought the commentary. I thought Jesse and JR had a really good match. I know they didn't like commentating with each other, but I thought they did a good job in this one. And the whole thing just came together to create this wonderful story that inspires you as a Sting fan, and it plays off of their history with one another. The fact that Vader, if anything, I think the announcing maybe could have leaned into that a little bit more, but yeah. But the match itself plays off of their backstory and the fact that every time they've touched before this, Vader has just beaten the hell out of Sting. Mm-hmm. So I love this match. Still to this day, it's my favorite Sting and Vader match. I know a lot of people like the strap match, but this one to me has the more satisfying finish, has just tells a more complete story.
Boy, I was shocked at how much I like this. I didn't expect to. I was kind of like mean about it, and then I just got sucked in, and part of that is Vader, honestly, just straight up, but a lot of it was Sting, and even Jesse, who is usually a fucking asshole during commentary, was cheering Sting on, and I'm like, what is this, like, when does he ever cheer a babyface? But yeah. The crowd was like fucking insane. And it was an experience, especially that suplex, like you said. Oh my God. I was freaking out. I was like, no, he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. And then he did it. It was something else. Even when like it slowed down a little, like, cause it had a very steady pace. Yeah. It very few slow spots, but it's not quick. Like, it slowly unfolds for you. And even when they did slow it down a little bit, it was still like captivating. Because Vader is so fucking huge and Sting is a big guy. So just seeing him being twisted like that and broken down like that, I mean, it was even for Vader doing it, it was amazing. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I thought that when he did the little backslide move and got Vader up and he backslid him down to get the shoulders down, I thought he got it. I bet on that. Yeah, I did too. I remember when I first watched that match back in the day, I remember thinking that was the finish because I was like, oh, he got him. Yep. And then he kicked out, and I was so deflated because I was like, well, that was his chance. Yep. And it's so methodical too. Like, you can see them trying to figure out how to get the guy to make a mistake or just catch him just right. You knew that, or they knew that it was going to be a battle, but you just had to, if it was going to break your way or not. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I didn't feel like I felt like when we did our Ric Flair episode and Ric Flair and Vader, like that whole time I was like, oh Jesus, Ric's going to die. Like, it was just a totally different feel from Vader here too. Like, he knew that Sting knew that he could get him, and that was the key. So it was fantastic and very little emotion in the match. Like, they weren't like hot. They weren't angry. It didn't seem fueled by hate, but there are a couple little spots when the punching starts, especially on Vader's side, where some of those punches look like, oh my God, like legit. The rope-a-dope, the rope-a-dope scene where Sting fires up and waves him on and says, come on, and then it covers up again. Yeah. It was really like a little flare of like, emotion coming out in it. Otherwise, pretty, I don't want to say emotionless, but just not
just a competition.
Yeah, just not.
Right.
It wasn't
Mutual
hate
respect.
filled, right? Yeah. So, and then Harley Race, of course, with his interference of just waiting on that little spot, and I love the finish. It was great. I was like, what the hell have y'all done to me? I enjoyed this match a lot.
Yes.
And turned you out.
Yeah.
I even liked how the moments of frustration from the guys in the match, like Vader hits the splash but rolls off too quickly and can't get the pin, and he's frustrated with himself. And there's a moment where Sting goes outside and tries the Stinger splash on the guardrail like he always does and misses. And Jesse on commentary brilliantly keeps going back to Sting had his chance. He got too aggressive, too overconfident, went after him outside the ring, and it's going to cost him the match. And then Vader making the mistakes along the way that end up costing him the match. One of the great things in all of these Sting Vader matches is the sort of mental game between the two characters, and how usually if Sting gets the W, it's because Vader has made a mistake. Yep. Because Vader gets overconfident and screws up somewhere, whereas Sting has to wrestle a perfect match to beat Vader, basically. So, yeah.
I especially love that spot with the Vader punches, sort of in that middle stretch of the match that you mentioned, Jenny, where it's sort of like art meeting life, because you see Sting start to fire up, and you got to figure Vader is like really peppering him with those hands.
It looks painful.
Yeah, by his own recounting, like Vader wasn't someone who really could do a good worked punch, so he would just like lay into people, and the only way to really get him to back off was just to give it back to him. And I think we can see that good example of that in this match. At the same time, it's a good callback to their earlier that battle at the Great American Bash, where Vader took over very early, and Sting just could never make the comeback, right? And he just got brutalized. And here he's covering up, he's defending, giving it back to Vader, and it's like he has that moment. This is character stuff now, right? Where he's saying, I can beat you, motherfucker. I've got your number. I've got you figured out. You're not going to take me down like you did before. So it's like he learned from that earlier match, and he's gone into this with a strategy that is working very well. I like that we see how deceptively strong and powerful Sting is also. Yes. This is something that people often fail to consider, because he's thought of as such a kind of a, not so much a high flyer, but someone who's known for more of his quickness and those really explosive comebacks. But man, he's got some strength. I mean, you mentioned that German suplex. He's also hitting big backdrops. He does a Samoan drop at one point. The great finish, of course, which is just spectacular. Vader coming off the top rope, Sting catching him in a power slam, which looks awesome today, but I can only imagine for 1992.
Oh, my God.
When you did not see that kind of thing all the time.
I popped so hard for that.
You didn't see that outside of Steiner Brothers matches ever in those days.
Right. It's such a convincing finish, too. You figure if you're going to put Vader away, it's got to be like a crafty, he slipped on a banana peel and you capitalize, like the backslide spot, But if you aren't going to do that, then it has to look very visually impressive to get a 3 count on Vader, and that very much fit the bill. So,
and what about that DDT off the middle rope, too?
Yeah, DDT off the rope. There you go.
That was sick.
Didn't see that in 1992 outside of Steiner's matches either. Awesome stuff there. But, of course, you have Vader with a very interesting headgear.
Yes. Vader wears a do-rag to the ring.
Right.
Which may be the only time that I've ever seen Vader in a do-rag.
Which Harley Race takes off like he's taking off Darth Vader's fucking helmet.
Very careful.
Just reverently taking it off. I'm like, what is he doing?
Harley's like, I don't want to smudge the do-rag.
Yeah, it's not quite the Mastodon helmet that he would have later
No,
on.
not quite.
It's treated with the same kind of prestige by Harley Race.
You know,
I can't say with confidence, but I feel like the do-rag was a distinctly like December 1992 thing. Like maybe that was just like that. The do-rag had its moment in pop culture at that time, and Vader felt he needed to capture it while it was hot.
tell it to Hulk Hogan.
This is true.
But I like that he lost his mask too.
Oh my God, yeah. And
So
Jesse
great.
with that call of, he knocked his headgear off. That's how hard he hit him.
Gloves too.
Yep.
He's bare-fisted
Gloves,
there.
yep.
Wow, that sounded wrong.
How does he look even scarier to me?
I know.
Without that stuff.
It's
Like,
nuts.
It would sometimes be like a spot that you would, I remember, and it's interesting the parallels here, because I was thinking during this match of the parallels of John Cena and Sting, and they're in sort of
Wow. Yeah.
the style that John Cena took from Sting. And I was thinking about that Brock Lesnar match with John Cena when Lesnar takes off the gloves at one point, and he just had the bare hands there, and it's like that's kind of what it felt like here. It's like, oh shit, if Vader is dangerous with the gloves, what's he going to be like without the gloves? You know?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great comparison too. That's one I think I've thought of, but I sort of forget about. When you look at Cena and Lesnar as kind of the modern day Sting Vader, especially looking at that, what was it, SummerSlam 2014?
Yep.
Yeah. Something else that I feel like I have to mention is that I really sold this match short the first time I saw it. I think because it was in the context of watching Starrcade 1992 as a whole, and I kind of hate that pay-per-view. Like, just outside of this match, I think it's garbage. I fucking hate the Battle Ball. I've always hated the Battle Ball. And this is a bunch of Battle Ball matches, and it just wore me down. So by the time I usually with a show that really sucks, you get to the one good match, and you're like, oh, finally, this sense of relief now. And I was so cooked. I think by the time I got to this match in the card, I was just like, yeah, it's a good Sting Vader match, whatever. I'm done with the show, moving on, But watching it in isolation, I'm like, holy shit, this is a great match.
Yep.
I mean, this is really, really a great match that I would put up against kind of some of the best that WCW has ever put out there. So that's my mea culpa there. That one's on me.
That's amazing. I'm glad. I'm really glad, Tim. I've always loved this match, and it stands out. But I've always watched it in a vacuum because, truth be told, I don't know that I've ever. Well, I know that I have seen it once. I just don't remember anything about Starrcade '92 other than this match. Because I used to rent all the VHSs when I was a kid, so I know that I saw this on VHS when I was a kid. But I don't remember anything else. I remember that Great Muta won the Battle Bowl match, but I don't know anything else about it. And the rest of the show,
he did actually.
Did he not? I don't know. Somebody like that. Rick Rude?
Was this? Oh, I think this is where they had that horrible. Chono wasn't a match, and it was awful. Was it?
And they had Ron Simmons versus Dr. Death in a world title match.
Jesus.
Muta and Chono have that. It feels like it's longer, but it's about 13 minutes for the NWA Heavyweight Championship. It is awful. That match is so bad. Simmons and Dr. Death is pretty bad too, and goes long. Yeah, I mean, some of the tag stuff, I know people really like Douglas and Steamboat versus Wyndham and Pillman for the tag title. I don't know. I think maybe I need to revisit that also, because that really didn't do anything for me the last time, or the first time, I should say, I saw it. But outside of that and this match here, Sting and Vader, it's a real shit show, that Starrcade.
Sounds like I'll love it.
Well, no, I don't think you would, because
No?
these are just boring tag team matches with
Okay.
nothing to really.
You mean Great American Bash? Oh my God! I just realized something, Tim. It's a repeat of Great American Bash '92.
It kind
Great
of is.
Sting and Vader match surrounded by boring tag matches.
Yeah, well, that wasn't a Battle Bowl situation, was it? It
True.
was just a stupid ass tournament that they were doing.
Let's
that was
hook them
also
up, boys.
boring and awful. Yeah, but
Well, here's the question I have. I don't remember anything about the damn King of Cable tournament. So Sting wins this. Sting wins this giant trophy
Yeah.
to become the King of Cable. But what does that mean exactly?
I was hoping y'all would have some story for me to regale me with the whole
I
tournament.
honestly don't remember the tournament. I don't remember anything about. I don't remember what it represented. It feels like they could have beaten King of the Ring by like 6 or 7 months and had Sting come out in a robe and crown and be King Sting or King Corbin if you wanted to be. But they had opportunities and they didn't do anything with it. But Tim, what are your memories of this? And what exactly was the damn King of Cable?
my memories are simply of talking about the King of Cable tournament on our last episode on Rick Rude, because Sting and Rude had, I think, a semifinal match on one of the clashes. It wasn't the Sting Rude Clash match that you picked, Greg. It was a different Sting Rude Clash of the Champions match that was part of this King of Cable tournament. And yeah, I think Vader and Dustin Rhodes had a match also as part of this tournament. It was not a Vader-Dustin Rhodes match that I picked on a prior installment of this show. So what I'm getting the sense is that a lot of unmemorable matches took place as part of this King of Cable tournament.
Well, and it feels like if your victory deems you to be the King of Cable, that the
Yes.
finals would be on cable television, right?
Well, stands to reason, not on pay-per-view, right?
I by the way, I found the brackets for the King of Cable tournament. Would you like to hear them?
Yes.
Oh, please.
WCW United States Champion Rick Rude pinned WCW NWA Tag Team Champion Barry Windham. This happened November 2nd at Center Stage Theater on WCW Saturday Night. On the same episode, Sting defeated Brian Pillman, which could have been.
Oh, man. I've always wanted to see a Sting-Pillman match. I did not know that existed.
Get ready for these other two matches, the other two quarterfinals. Big Van Vader pinned Tony Atlas.
Okay. Tony
In a
Atlas
match.
in 1990. All right.
In a match where both Harley Race and Cactus Jack were barred from ringside. Vader defeated Tony Atlas in 3 minutes.
Sounds about right.
All right, and the final quarterfinal, the Natural Dustin Rhodes defeated the Barbarian,
Oh, wow.
who was subbing
That
for
was-
Jake Roberts.
Subbing for Jake Roberts, of course he was. That explains a lot.
The King of
I-
Cable, ladies and gentlemen.
I think I would be theoretically interested in a Dustin Rhodes Jake Roberts match, but Dustin and
that would-
Barbarian.
Old Barbie.
Yeah.
Put Barbie with Ming, and I'm into him. But on his own,
So this, of course, does lead to Rude, Sting, and Vader, Dustin in the semifinals.
Correct.
So I wasn't imagining things. What I was imagining was Sting winning this Battle Bowl. You were right, Greg. Great Muta won the Battle Bowl here on Starrcade 92.
Sting won the first Battle Bowl in '91.
Yeah, but he didn't get his ring.
His ring until the beginning of this
until
one.
this one.
Budgetary cuts.
WCW, everybody. Worth noting, though, I mean, we're dancing around this show a little bit, but I did have a larger point here, and it's that Sting and Vader were both pulling double and what would turn out to be triple duty on this pay-per-view, Starrcade 92. They were participants in the Battle Bowl earlier in the night. So you had Vader teaming with Dustin against Sasuke and the Barbarian. So that's Battle Bowl for you. That seems like an odd pairing. And Sting, what was Sting's match on this in the Battle Bowl tournament?
Hell if I remember.
Steve Williams. Oh, my God. So it's Dr. Death also pulling double duty here. Dr. Death and Sting against Liger and Eric Watts.
Eric Watts.
Yes.
Liger and Eric Watts were a tag team.
Liger and Eric Watts were a tag team.
Tim, do you realize that this means that with Sting and Dr. Death, 2 members of the Ass Off tournament teaming together?
Oh, wow.
That's double the ass.
That's
double the ass, double the fun.
Booty meat.
Ass shaking right there, yeah. King of ass is what this tournament should have been.
Yeah, but then it would have had to have a Williams versus Sting final, and
Nobody wants
I don't know if we were prepared for that. I mean, you have Dr. Diaper against Sting ass. So,
right. So anyway, it is impressive that Sting and Vader were able to have this very, very impressive singles match after working respective tag team matches earlier in the night. And that's why Sting looked a little bit scuffed up at the start of this match. He did not reapply his face paint after his tag match. And then they both go on to compete in the Battle Bowl Battle Royal, which, wow, isn't that exciting?
Another thing about this match, the Sting and Vader match, you mentioned that he didn't reapply his face paint. I think that actually accentuated the match because there's a point where Vader punches him in the corner right in the face, and Sting leans over, and there's this hunk of white face paint that is just hanging off of his face. Thought that was
kind
really
of
cool
dripping
visual.
off of him almost.
Yep.
Yeah. And Sting's been in a war you can sort of measure the how brutal the match was by the amount of face paint that is left on Sting by the end of it. And after this match, it is nil. I mean,
which is also a nice transition into our next match too.
It sure is. I had that written down as well because our next match will take us to the Great American Bash of 1996. This was June 16th of 96 in the Baltimore Arena, as so many Great American Bashes were. I chose this. It is really just an exhibition showcase here. Sting against Lord Steven Regal. Excuse me. I apologize for that.
Accompanied by someone.
Accompanied by Jeeves. So
was Jeeves the same as Sir William?
No. One of them was
Bill Dundee.
I think it was Sir William. Bill.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
So who was Jeeves?
I don't think that was the same guy.
Probably not.
We're going to get blasted if it's...
We're going to get blasted either way.
We're going to get... Yeah, well, let's face it.
Yeah.
I'll try to find out Jeeves' identity.
I also required you guys to watch the pre-match promo here earlier in the show.
Yes. Why
Jenny,
is that, Tim?
Because
Sting was gay bashing Regal?
No. Well, sort of. Here's the thing. It's just to set it up. It's just a backstage interview. Mean Gene and Sting talking about the match. And this promo somehow managed to be, it's both wildly homoerotic and homophobic at the same time.
How is it erotic?
Well, okay, I'll tell you. Well, how to put this in polite company. So Sting is talking about how he thinks Regal might be a bit of a priss or a cis, and
well, Mean Gene says, if you ask me, this guy's could be something of a sissy or a prissy.
That's right. There we go. Which is pretty standard, fair 90s wrestler smack talk, whatever, fuck it. But then Sting goes on to say, and to talk about how, I don't know how they breed them in England, but that's not how we breed them in America. And when we breed them in America, I've bred a lot of men in my life. And okay, he doesn't say that, but he all but says it. And it's sort of like,
I like when he pantomimes drinking tea and he has
drinking tea with the
pinky
out
up and okay, you're making fun of him drinking tea. Come on, Sting.
And like Gene has this Mean Gene does one of those very Mean Gene things during a promo where he's trying to keep it together and he just kind of covers his mouth and uses his eyes to look very serious, but he's not looking at the camera because he knows he's going to just totally corpse if he does. And he's just got his hand over his mouth and he's sort of stroking his chin a little bit. And he's barely keeping it together. So I had to make you guys watch this and share in my horror and amusement.
There's that moment where Sting just goes, I can't even finish it. Oh!
Right.
He walks off, and Mean Gene's like, well, I may have gone a little too far. And the Sting comes back, and he's like, I don't know. He's a tough guy. I'm just saying I'm not too sure about him.
He's not too sure how they breed guys in England. It's not how they breed guys in America.
By the way, are you ready to have your minds blown? Well, Tim, at least. I guess I don't know if Jenny will remember this minuscule character in WCW history, but I know who Jeeves is now.
Okay, help us out here.
Jeeves is the same man who portrayed Wildcat Willie.
No shit.
I know about Wildcat Willie.
You do?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, he is Jeeves.
I didn't know that. I thought
That's
that was just
amazing.
like a guy who worked arenas or something. I didn't know it was I figured it was
It
He's
is.
real-
like a Ralphus type person.
His real name was Gary Hedrick.
Huh. Okay.
And he was the fellow who plays the guitar for Squire David Taylor, Earl Robert Eaton, and Lord Steve Regal in the Blue Bloods.
I wish that Regal had a pre-match promo here because he and Gene had a very interesting chemistry. If you go back and watch some of these mid-90s shows, like Regal sort of gets a lot of screen time and doing a lot of really funny, even to this day, still funny and not just funny for wrestling promos and interviews with Mean Gene. But unfortunately, we do not get that. But what we do get is Regal commanding just a ton of heat with this Baltimore crowd.
Yes.
They are so hot for this match and so hot getting on Regal's case. Baltimore crowds in general are just awesome for WCW. For some reason, I've never really understood why that was such a huge market for them. But, man, they really show out for this match, for this show. Some of the taunts in the match, you talked about Sting pantomiming the drinking the tea, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sort of continues into the match itself with the I don't even know how to describe some of the taunts here. They are
certainly unique.
Certainly unique, even for wrestling. This leads to the great line that you pointed out to me earlier, Jenny, with Dusty Rhodes commentary asking Tony Schiavone, "Why are your feet so close?"
Why are you sitting so close to me in this booth?
It's just
I had to pause it. I lost it.
What are we doing?
It's like, but I'll wait for you to. I'll wait for my turn. But good God.
And it doesn't really lead to anything. Ultimately, this turns into a very mat-based match, and kind of a showcase for these two as workers. Mm-hmm. And I think Regal particularly is a great compliment for Sting. Just you think of Sting and his ability to sell and to connect with the audience, mm-hmm. and Regal is just so very effective here at neutralizing the speed, the quickness, the strength as well of Sting that we talked about in our last match, grinding him down with all this mat work, and he's building that audience sympathy. Like already Sting has this great connection with the fans, and Regal is just so exploiting that here. It's mm-hmm. expert mm-hmm. psychology on display in this match. These people are desperate to see Sting rally, and when he does make that explosive comeback, Regal is just game for everything. Letting Sting get all of his signature shit in. But at the same time, he's kind of dictating the pace here. And this is a very deliberate match in the way that it's worked. At the same time, I think it's I think it's important to stress that nothing Regal does, to me anyway, is ever boring.
Mm-mm.
And that is a really huge distinction when you talk about somebody with such a mat-based offense. Regal's a guy always cognizant of his ring presence. He's making sure to add these little subtleties, when he's working something as basic as a rest hold. Just keeps you interested. He pokes an eye or grinds the forearm into the bridge of the nose, which they do a great job pointing out on commentary, or even just trash talking. It's like he knows this could get very boring if I'm just sitting here doing the equivalent of holding a chin lock, even
facial
though
expressions too.
Facial expressions sell it. Yeah. Yep. He's just so, God, I don't know if there's anyone else that good at these little things and just getting across and holding your attention in that way. So
at one point, Sting acts like he's going to charge him, and Regal's in the corner, and he does this full body shake, like he's super scared, and he's trying to get away, and he goes over the rope.
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Yes.
I'm low key a huge Regal fan. I've seen a good handful of his matches, but I don't know. There's something about him. It's that thing that Pete Dunne has, and
that's an excellent comparison.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's mat wrestling, a lot of it, and contortion and all these little subtle things, but it's not boring, and it's not funny, but you kind of laugh, and it's not badass, but you're like, oh shit, it's so beautifully and wonderfully subtle, but amazing to watch. And all the heat that he has with the crowd is just, he just feeds off of it. He's just, it gives him life, for the crowd to hate him. And, but I could go on and on about Regal because I love
Well, I was going to say, I feel like we've got to do a Regal episode
There
at some
will
point.
be a Regal
certainly.
episode. But
I'm already thinking of other matches that,
me too, yeah.
And there's a lot to choose from with them in WCW.
But Sting in this, looks a lot different, and I do prefer the dark hair on him.
Really?
And yes, actually, I'm partial to brunettes, but but he's very colorful. The other match he was powder blue and sort of all American looking, and now he's got sort of a neon gimmick going on here with pink boots. It looks good, for a guy wearing a scorpion or whatever on his thigh.
In 1996.
In 1996, it looks pretty good. And I thought he was really good, surprising me again with how much I enjoyed him in this match. They're pretty evenly matched, physically, and they have this chemistry. I'm not sure how much they actually wrestled with each other, but
Not much.
it seemed like this was sort of a special occasion. It's not something that he didn't have a long feud or whatever with Regal. But there was a little bit of a started in the promo, a little bit of a bullying aspect to Sting, which I thought was interesting because it was a little edgy. Feels a little different from him bullying Regal, but then in short order he's just tied up. He's being pretzeled on the mat, so he kind of gets his ass handed to him a little bit, which I really enjoyed. And then
Regal might be uncling him through.
oh my God, Dusty! It's just whenever we do this and we pick a match that has a Dusty commentary, I just automatically and just swoon. I can't help it. He's so fucking good. He's so hilarious. He says, "Power him down."
Power him down.
Power him down, baby. Wear his ass out.
And I know
He was titled ass out.
And I know I say the same things over and over about Dusty, but he's just magic, and he always brings magic to anything that I watch. And then something like this that I already enjoy, Dusty just takes it to the next level. And they were talking about the rest holds, like the submission holds, and they mentioned Dean Malenko, the man of 1,000 holds or something like that. And then he's like, he might not know that much, and Dusty like, he know 900.
Yes, and this is another match where Sting's face paint is totally worn off by the end of it, because
aren't
he's
he in
just
all of his matches? Does he ever keep any of his face paint?
Kind of depends.
Yeah, it depends on how long the match is and how intense the match is.
Yeah, this is a very intense match.
We've picked out some pretty intense ones.
We did, and this is what I refer to as intermediate Sting in terms of his look. So we are post blonde surfer Sting, but still pre Crow Sting. And I mean, I kind of like this look too. I do think the hair is a little bit long, just in the sense that maybe it's just the hairstyle. He kind of looks like Tammy, the office assistant at your daughter's school, kind of thing, with that haircut.
See, I was thinking he looked a little bit like Jim Lee Cyclops.
Ooh.
No, it's too long for that.
Shots fired.
Man.
No shots fired. I'm saying, like, maybe not Jim Lee, but like, sometimes I feel like sometimes when you see Cyclops get the let it grow out just a little bit, and it kind of be flying in the wind a little bit,
I get what you're saying.
Stiff breeze blowing through the arena.
I think the issue is that Sting just kind of has weird hair.
It's like curly, sort of.
Yeah, it's sort of wavy. It's not quite curly, but it's not quite straight. It is a little wavy, and when it grows out, like when it gets long, Jenny, I'm sure you'll get to that later. With Crow Sting, it works, but I don't know. It's like I said, it's intermediate Sting, and it's intermediate hair length that looks a little bit off. I mean, I guess it kind of reminds me of when he had the match with Triple H at WrestleMania 31, where people were like doing photoshops of him and like George Washington, I think. Very bizarre stuff. So yeah, there's an element to that going on. And by the way, shout out to, speaking of guys who are bred in England, shout out to our good friend Ben Locke, who I know is a fan of Sting Regal matches as well. And had a short conversation with him right before we recorded, who kind of smartened me up to a source on YouTube for some good matches that you may not find on the network. Perhaps some other work from these two. So thank you for that, Ben, and we hope you enjoy the show. You're a great dude.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, Ben. I wanted to talk a little bit about this match from the perspective of what it meant for Steven Regal at the time, because you have to remember at this point in '96, Sting had been kind of floating in limbo for a while, but he was still considered one of the top stars. He took a back seat to Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, but Sting was really right there with them as WCW's top homegrown star, certainly. Yeah. And yet he was kind of in the tag division, a little bit in the TV division, but yet still he was several tiers above Regal at this time. Steven Regal at this point was a tag team wrestler.
Yep.
He was teaming up with Robert Eaton and David Taylor in the Blue Bloods, and had been for about over a year at this point. They'd been the Blue Bloods, 2 years probably, and mainly he'd been in the tag division with occasional forays into the TV division. But Sting, and I say this as from the perspective of a kid that watched every episode of Nitro, Saturday Night, etc. Sting was several tiers above Regal in the pecking order, so it was kind of weird. I remember at the time for them to be wrestling each other on pay-per-view. It was a big elevation for Regal to be able to be in there with Sting. And I think as a fan, you're expecting this match to go a certain way. You're expecting, it's kind of like when you'll do a pay-per-view and Roman Reigns will wrestle Eric Rowan. You might be expecting Roman Reigns to destroy Eric Rowan because they're clearly different tiers of star power. And sometimes it does end up that way. Sometimes it doesn't. But in this case, I can tell you what I wasn't expecting when I first saw this match, which was only a couple years ago, actually. I didn't watch this match live. I was not expecting Regal to dominate most of this match, to control Sting, to hurt Sting in a lot of ways. I thought it was a great match for Regal because it showed a different side of him. Regal had kind of settled into this almost comedic heel role by this point, where baby faces would bump him around and he'd do the comedy spots where he begs off and, has to cheat to get an advantage. And this was a sadistic side of Regal, almost like, Jenny, you pointed out the kind of bullying aspects of Sting's character here, almost like Sting's bullying had kind of gotten under Regal's skin. And so he's showing a different side of himself here, where he's not gonna rely on the same old tactics. He is going to cheat. He is going to bend the rules, but he's also going to hurt Sting in the process.
When he takes that arm and starts twisting it up,
he's twisting the arm up. He grabs the arm and he's twisting up, and while he's got Sting in this twisting pretzel hold, he starts slapping him in the face, open hand slapping him right in the face, which is just too annoying. And I thought this was one of Regal's best performances, to be honest with you. I thought this was fantastic. He was so good in there, not looking like he was out of his way, because I think it would have been easy for the fans not to buy this match, because you're putting, what at that time probably the equivalent of like a just above Disco Inferno level character in there with one of your top stars. But the difference between Disco and Regal is Regal can assert himself in a match, and he does that here, and instantly you would buy Regal then stepping into the TV or U.S. title pictures after this match. I thought it was wonderful work from him. Sting was really good fighting from underneath, and I thought it showed a good side of him too, because you pointed this out earlier, Tim. You don't see Sting get in a lot of these sort of technical exhibitions. You don't see him have to hang on the mat with a great mat wrestler like a Dean Malenko or someone like that. Usually he's in these more explosive, power move trading matches. It was nice to see a different side of him, to see him have to work his way out of holds, to see him grinded down. And I think the fact that his face paint falls off by the end of the match was just an indicator how hard he was working, how difficult this contest was for him, and that Steven Regal, of all people, was the guy that could drag this match out of him. We had seen Sting take on, Avalanche and the Shark, both separately, and beat them. Big Bubba and the Guardian Angel, the Butcher, as well as the Zodiac. He had taken on so many different people in the company and beaten them, and here he is with Lord Steven and having the fight, one of the fights of his life. So this is what I would consider the epitome, guys, of a WCW hidden gem match, because it's in the midst of a pay-per-view where far more famous things happen. Remember, this was Rey Mysterio Jr.'s debut. This was also the Kevin Nash powerbombs Eric Bischoff through the table off the stage. This was in the height of the beginning of the NWO movement. And then on this show, with all these more famous things happening, you get this match. It's just gem of a match between two guys that probably wouldn't hook up on pay-per-view at any other time in history except right then. So this is the epitome of a hidden gem. If you of these three matches, I'm not saying this is the best of the three, because I think Sting and Vader is, but this is damn good. And I feel like you've probably seen Sting and Vader, and you've definitely seen the other match we're going to talk about because it's so famous. Give this match a watch if you have to pick just one, because I think that it will surprise a lot of people of just how good it is. Because I watched it again just before the show, and man, I was blown away by the hard work, by the smart work on both guys, and particularly Regal being as the kind of guy that's the general in the match, calling everything. And of course, nobody does a comeback with Sting. I like Sting. And I also thought, Tim, you kind of hinted at this earlier, they do hit all of Sting's signature spots, but they change it up just enough. It's not Stinger splash right into the Scorpion. They set it up completely differently. That little
Regal actually blocks it with the knees. It looks like he's gonna cut off Sting's comeback, and maybe if they'd had more time, they would have gone into another heat stretch, which would have been really amazing. But I have a feeling that they just had to go home, and Sting quickly regains the advantage and wins with the Scorpion Deathlock.
Boy,
You know,
Regal was squirming like a cockroach in that thing too.
yeah, it looked good.
Selling his ass off. It was great.
Yeah, that's a move that can look a little bit. Greg, you're a aficionado of
Yes.
rating sharpshooters. Do you do the same for Scorpion Deathlocks? A completely different move, of course.
Yes, completely different. Much like Zodiac Man and the Booty Man would be different people.
Yeah.
I never have really rated Scorpion Deathlock.
So
However, I did notice though that the Scorpion, and I forgot to mention it actually in our Sting and Vader segment, the Scorpion Deathlock that he applies to Vader is one of the best Scorpion Deathlocks on a fat guy that I've ever seen.
It is. It really is. And it was in the middle of the match too, which, I mean, these finisher submission holds in the middle of the match are like commonplace today. Happens all the time. And it's not even like a false finish spot. Like, you never buy into that something happening that early is going to finish. But
right.
That's another thing that you didn't see in 1992. So
right.
Yeah.
And so I would also say that with Sting, I'm starting to realize that the Scorpion Deathlock he had in the early days looked really good. And even this one on Regal still looked really good because of the way Regal was selling it. Even though I think Sting was still a really good wrestler as he aged, his Scorpion Deathlock looked worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, he got kind of lazy with it.
Yeah, got kind of lazy with it. It ended up, by the time he was in TNA, it looked around the Rock level of sharpshooter, which is really not really what you're aiming for.
Shamefully, it did. Yes.
In the sharpshooter business. But I would say I'd give the Vader one a 9 out of 10 on the sharpshooter scale.
Wow.
And I'd give the Regal one a solid 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I've got no quibbles with it at all.
We'll talk about another one here in just a little bit. But
Yeah,
maybe wouldn't get quite as high a rating. But
yeah, so I would just wrap up this match by saying, by very quickly, in a nutshell, all of what you said, Greg. If you're someone who hasn't seen the match before, and you look at it and you go, yeah, Sting Regal, sure, they had a match on pay-per-view. That's not too surprising because it's the type of weird thing WCW would do. Don't overlook it, though, because while you may not be surprised to see that the match exists, you might be surprised by what kind of a match it is. So, yeah, check this one out if you haven't seen it. I kind of knew right away when I picked Sting that if you, Greg, or you, Jenny, hadn't picked this, that it was probably going to be my match. I did check out a few others just to kind of do my due diligence here. But yeah, I went right back to this and knew, look at that, take a shot. I'm picking a 1996 match. Who knew? I mean, I can't help it. This is what happens, I guess, when you weren't watching at the time.
It's an amazing year, truly.
God.
All right. Well, let's take a break, and then when we come back, we will talk about that infamous match that Greg mentioned.
Ooh.
And I have things to say.
Judy.
Shoe Judy, indeed. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Place to Be Nations, JT Rosero and Chad Campbell here. We want to let you know that we have over 24 podcasts available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and PlaceToBeNation.com. We now offer them to you on 2 great feeds. On the Place to Be Nation Wrestling feed, we dive into topics running the gamut from today's WWE to the glory days of yesteryear and the ins and outs of the territory days. In addition to our full-length shows, we also deliver to you special pod blasts on topics old and new.
The Place to Be Nation Pop feed is a veritable treasure trove of great content. Offer tremendous shows covering the land of movies, television, life, comics, and sports, brought to you by the most knowledgeable and insightful folks in the podcast world.
You can find all these great shows, plus archives of our past podcasts from over the past 8 years as well by subscribing to both feeds on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to rate and leave feedback as well. All of these shows, plus others, available on PlaceToBeNation.com, where we cover pro wrestling, sports, movies, comics, plus in-depth search projects, and much more. Be sure to support our site by using www.PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon when doing your online shopping. We want to thank our friends at Boneheads Wing Bar, ProWrestlingOnly.com, and TheHistoryOfWrestling.com as well. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Place to Be Nation Wrestling. Welcome back to another great edition of Talk'n WCW, where we are talking the Stinger. Before we get back to action with, I think we can all agree, is probably the most infamous match in WCW history for a lot of reasons. We've got to tell you what's been going on in and around the nation across our two great podcast feeds. On our sister feed, the Place to Be Nation Pop Network, we have the Hard Traveling Fanboys, which Greg Phillips, you are one half of. And you and your cohort, Nick Duke, are continuing the annual Walking Dead month with, hey, look at that, your guest, Jennifer Smith. So this was a very fortunate and totally unplanned bit of synchronicity here.
Sure was.
Indeed. And it was a fun episode. We actually we had a chance to discuss the countdown, even our 5 worst episodes of AMC's The Walking Dead, a show that is in its 10th season. And I should have edited that. Yeah. Anyway, anyway, I lost track of what I was doing. Yeah,
sorry, that was
so
my bad.
we counted down the 5 worst episodes of The Walking Dead on AMC. A lot of things to choose from. It's been a show that has had very high highs that I still watch to this day, but we thought it only right to point out the lowest of the lows, of which there have been many. And Jenny, you were kind enough to join us for what turned out to be quite a rousing and funny discussion.
It is my 3rd Walking Dead month. I would not miss it.
I'm looking forward to hear you guys get your hate on, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as we are in the month of October, Scott Criscolo is continuing his look at the classic Universal Monsters series in his latest Pop Goes the Classics. It's 1933's The Invisible Man. So it's a great collection of these Universal monster films that was just released on Blu-ray. How many movies? Something like 29, 30 something.
Yeah, it's crazy amount.
Ton of movies, great value. I'm thinking about picking it up myself, and Scott has been going through that set and reviewing these films. So a lot of great stuff there. Really topical stuff too, of course. You have the comics side of things, the DC4U podcast, continuing with DC Comics Best Horror Offerings, and this time out, it is Todd and Russell reviewing the Swamp Thing pilot from earlier this year.
Which is already canceled.
So guess you won't be hearing much more about that show, disappointingly enough. We have This Week in the NFL with Roger and Johnny recapping the last set of games and previewing the upcoming weekend's batch. Siblings, Kevin and Mary, host the Brother-Sister Rewatch podcast, and this is episode 20, where they are covering The Office, season 3, episodes 11 and 12. Sunday Groove, hey, look at this. It's David Sunday welcoming me back to the show for my 3rd time somehow, even though I only know anything about 2 bands. And we talked and bitched, well, I mostly bitched about the 80s song tournament, but also a lot of 80s music that we love. Kind of went all over the place with that, as I am wont to do with these discussions and semi-annual get-togethers with David on Sunday Groove. Now, we also have the year-end pop with Andy, Scott, Dr. G, and John Diamato, discussing sports, news, and pop culture of the year 1978. I was -5 years old. But I understand pop culture did exist in 1970.
Or did it, though?
I guess I will find out.
I believe they didn't call it pop culture at that time, though. They call it talkies in those days.
Talkies. There we go.
Color television.
Doo-wop group on every corner. In any case, Pop Goes the Movies is looking at the controversial Joker film, once again with Mr. Diamato and Andy. That is DC's latest offering. I'm looking forward to seeing it. Greg, you and Jenny have both already seen it, and you are just kind of stoking the fires here and thinking this is something I do perhaps want to spend money on, assuming I'll be allowed in the theater.
I really would love to hear your take on it. Like, I can't decide whether you're going to love it or hate it. So
Yeah, I don't know either. You may not like, but
Never know.
It's a movie that is worth seeing,
Yes.
whether you like it or not. But
Yes.
it's something. Yeah, it left an impression on me for sure.
All right, very good. The NBA team is back with Adam and Andrew providing a slew of team previews, not team previews for the upcoming NBA regular season. I did say team, but to me it sounded like team coming out of my mouth. I should stop talking. Last week, JT Rosero and
Hear
Leanne
it, Bischoff.
are here with an emergency pop goes to the couch. Why is it an emergency? Well, it's an emergency because they're talking Jersey Shore, including Ron's arrest, Jenny being shitty, and more. Not you, Jenny, the other Jenny. In Jersey.
obviously.
I just did the Mean Gene finger wag while rubbing my chin. I'll just leave it at that.
Well,
So all that is to say, check out Place to Be Nation Pop. I will remind you that the greatest song of the 80s tournament has concluded on Place to Be Nation with the bullshit, doo-doo shit, bullshit politics in the back winner, Sweet Child of Mine by Guns N' Roses. Are you kidding me? Crown the champion. Again, check out Sunday Groove where I bitch about that at length because this is a ridiculous decision. And we can never do tournaments again. This is our last tournament, and we aren't doing anymore. Tournaments are hereby canceled forever on Place to Be Nation because of this outcome. We cannot have good things. Okay, what else we got? Jenny or Greg?
Well, I think that we've got to check out a brand new podcast feed brought to you by our very own Jennifer Smith.
I guess I could have told you about that.
I guess you
The
could.
Jenny Position can be found on Podbean, iTunes, and your favorite podcatcher app.
It's so
You'll
funny.
be the home of Geek and Sassy, Talkin' Pop, Freak Out Drive-In, and lots of fun new content, Jenny.
You're making us work for you.
I love it. It's so funny. You just totally no-sold the rest of that sentence, and you're just like, nope, no more
There isn't another
tournaments.
sentence.
Yes,
that was
there
the end of
is.
it. No, there's not.
All right.
I guess we're doing a sitcom tournament or something. I guess fucking Boy Meets World will win. Look forward to that one. I'm sure it's great. Saved by the Bell will win. Was
God, I love our live reads so much.
I'm telling you, we need to do the
Look, Boy Meets World just won the tournament.
We need to do the greatest department store tournament, just like we talked about on the last.
Yes. Gayfer's the number one seed, for sure.
I'm going Woolworths.
Service merchandise. It wasn't a department store.
For the month of October, Place to Be
Best
Nation
product.
is holding our first annual Halloween movie challenge. We're giving you
All right, this is more
suggestions
like
on what movies you should watch leading up to All Hallows Eve. And when you do, go on social media and let us know by using the hashtag PTBN Halloween Movie Challenge. But don't stop there. Every time you watch a scary or silly horror movie or special, let us know and we'll add it to our list. I've already been doing that. Already been watching a bunch of scary movies and using that hashtag. Over on the wrestling feed.
I like the engagement.
Me
That's
too.
excellent.
Yeah, it is cool. And you can click on that little hashtag and you can see what everybody else is watching. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
On the wrestling feed, Chris and Devin are back to break down the latest WWE pay-per-view, Hell in a Cell, on PTBN's Instant Reaction Show. On the Mothership, the Place to Be podcast, JT, Scott, and guest Todd Weber kick off a whole new decade of pay-per-views with Royal Rumble 1990. On the latest PTBN Extreme 3-Way Dance, JT, John, and I continue our ECW adventure with When Worlds Collide. On main event, number 135, Scott, Nate, and Steve welcome Jordan Duncan to talk about the past 2 weeks of programming, including AEW, NXT, and SmackDown. On row 1, seat 1, it is October Guest Fest, as Ben invites a slew of guests, including Excite Wrestling and the best independent wrestlers on the circuit. Don't forget to check out PlaceToBeNation.com each and every day. We have new voices and fresh takes bringing you articles on topics in the worlds of wrestling, sports, and pop culture. But don't forget about veteran columns like the Wednesday Walk Around the Web with Glenn, where he has the most interesting and unexpectedly funny stories on the World Wide Web. And for college football fans, Scott and Logan have their weekly campus hot takes, looking back at the previous week and looking ahead to the biggest matchups. Catch their weekly column every Tuesday afternoon. And if you're doing online shopping over at Amazon.com, be sure to click on the Amazon banner on the right-hand side of the Place to Be Nation homepage, or use PlaceToBeNation.com/Amazon, and it takes you right to Amazon and helps out PTBN with no cost to you.
Don't forget to check out our social media pages, by the way.
Yes, and the message board at bigelow34.com for information on joining our GWWE pay-per-view and TV match ever project.
I just feel like people need to get in the conversation today and start researching their lists.
I think they do.
Come on.
And those ballots are live, so you can turn those in now. So get your list together, and you got until December 31st.
Yeah, and I will say on the topic of GWWE, we were kind of, and I guess we are still kind of doing a live watch in Facebook Messenger. We have a group. However, our week has been kind of screwed now by all this wrestling, in a good way, but also in a bad way, because it seemed like Friday nights were sort of our sweet spot for that for a while, and now SmackDown is on Friday, and for some reason people watch SmackDown. So we tend not to have a great turnout doing live watches in that chat. But if you do want to get in on that action, if you need suggestions for your ballot, you're making your list, you want to revisit some matches, see what other folks are thinking, just, I guess, hit me up on Messenger, on Facebook, on Twitter. I am at Cyke68, CYKE68. And I will add you to that group, and we'll try to get something together and watch some matches. I mean, we've watched a great many up to this point, but this is a huge stretch project that we're doing on Place to Be Nation. So, I mean, it's not like we're ever going to run out here. So, if you have any interest in that, we will try to get it. I will try to get it together and organize something. And that's that.
One match that I don't think that we watched in that group is a Sting match from Starrcade 1997.
Oh, boy.
So
yes. Welcome back to Talk'n WCW, where on this episode we rebooked Starrcade 1997.
No, we don't. No, we don't. Okay, because imagine my surprise as I'm watching these today and enjoying the hell out of them. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I gotta like Sting now, whatever this life is. So I don't know what the fuck I'm doing anymore.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. I picked this match because I knew it was a big deal.
Crap.
I knew it was a big deal match, but I had never seen it. So
I didn't know that I had a feeling you hadn't seen it, but I thought that you knew the match by its reputation, and you picked it to troll us because you hate Sting. That was my impression.
Well,
mine as well.
You know me very well, so that's
so that was correct.
And
so what? Oh, so you kind of played yourself because
I kind of did.
Let me ask you this: had you watched all these matches a week ago, right? And you got to this one, would you have been like, never mind, I'm gonna change my match?
No.
Which we've done before. These things happen behind the scenes sometimes.
No. See, this is where
Oh, I'm ready for this swerve. I'm ready for it.
I like this match.
Oh, wow.
Folks,
What is wrong with
what
me?
you have just heard is the new greatest moment in the history of Talk'n WCW. Record it, broadcast it over the airwaves in whatever your preferred method is. Put it on Twitter. Hashtag this thing. Jenny breaks Talk'n WCW. Put it out there because this is the moment. This is the pinnacle. This is what we've been building to for all these episodes. Please carry on, Jenny.
Okay, so I don't. It's so funny because, first of all, they did a really good. Like, I didn't watch the whole pay-per-view, but they did a really good job at like catching everybody up on what the whole beef was in NWO versus WCW and Hogan and Sting and title and just so much drama leading up to this.
Best storyline, in my opinion, in WCW history.
Right, and that's how, that was my impression.
Not a controversial opinion, I don't think.
And then Michael Buffer so fucking extra with his introductions and just like, okay.
Making his return to the squared circle.
He never shuts up. So
he is the master.
What is wrong with you?
The ruler.
And so Hogan comes out, Hollywood Hogan in all his glory. It's not entertaining. It's pretty good. But
amazing entrance.
The epic Sting entrance just blows Hogan away. Like, I was like, what? How? I don't understand how they did it. Like, how did they do that entrance? Because it was like, it wasn't a monitor. It looked like, I don't even know. What was it that was making all the lights in the top of the arena up there?
I guess it was Klondike Bill in the crack production team of WCW. They would do this shit. This was a thing that WCW went through, actually, where they would have. They seem to be very heavily invested in like the laser light show stuff.
Yeah, laser. That's it. Okay.
Think about like Glacier, right?
Yeah.
And just all of. Matter of fact, I bet you a lot of the production that went into Glacier, and they realized, God, this is a real sunk cost right here. What can we do?
What can we do that might look cool?
Mm-hmm.
and yeah.
So they repurposed it for. It's the same people producing the same stuff, so it's you figure they you put that behind a guy who's a pretty marquee name, iconic dude such as Sting in his first match back in 16 months. Pretty good outlay of capital there.
And what did you make of the little boy's monologue, Jenny?
I thought it was amazing.
Yeah,
it's awesome. I was like, is that his kid? Like, who is this little? I wanted to know everything. Like, how are they doing this?
One man will rise.
It was so great. I was like, okay, I'm not ready for this match, but because I've heard the term like crow sting, and I know what that is, like intellectually, but like, and I've seen them before, obviously, but. It was something about this.
The context of it. Getting the story.
And I was like, whoa, shit. Emo Sting is hot. And
there it was.
I was like, okay, yeah. All right. Because he looks so different. He's not
totally
big and tan like he was in the past two matches I've seen. And he was small. Some would
view that as a negative, Jenny. We'll talk about that.
I guess so, but for his gimmick here, it works. Like, he couldn't be a big old muscly dude, in that get up and that face paint and that hair, but it just all worked, and it's so different from what I had seen, and they didn't like the crowd was just fucking crazy, like just.
Yeah,
out of their minds. Like,
My friends and I were the same way watching it at my house, or at my friend's house, rather. We were in a frenzy to finally see Sting. Like, I was sweating. I always sweat. So I was sweating even more than I already sweat naturally as Sting was coming to the ring. Amazing moment. And really, Jenny, everything you're laying out is this match. This match had the and perhaps you would agree, Tim, I'm not sure. This had the biggest big fight feel of any match in WCW history because the build-up was the best build-up that WCW had ever done. Literally a year and a half of storytelling went into this match. And they have the video screen with probably the best video package that WCW had ever put together, detailing the rivalry between Hogan and Sting. Hogan gets this iconic entrance coming down to the ring, air guitar and all that stuff. And then you get Sting and you get the Crow and you get the raindrop, Sting dropping down in the warehouse and with the image of Hollywood Hogan's face and the shattered glass on the ground beneath his feet. Badass.
And this is
such a big feel.
Is this the first time we have heard his new entrance theme?
Yes.
Yeah. Which is pretty excellent and fitting for the character. And I would agree with you, Greg, in that I wasn't even watching wrestling at the time, and I was still sold by this build, such a thing as possible. I mean, Starrcade 97, I've said before, is literally the show that brought me back to wrestling. After taking off the better part of the 90s as a kid, I just really wasn't regularly watching wrestling throughout this time period. Somehow or another, just through that cultural osmosis, I don't know.
Everyone was talking about it at my school. It was a huge event. It was the most bought pay-per-view in wrestling history to that point, I believe.
Yeah. So this was, this literally after seeing this pay-per-view, I started watching wrestling, WCW, and eventually the WWF on a regular weekly basis again.
That blows me away. Like that's powerful right there, you know?
It is. And I wondered going into this if we just wouldn't have anything new to say about this match because it has been talked about so much. But I think the words "I liked this match" from you, Jenny,
unexpected
words that
development
have never been uttered about the match.
I have very bad takes. I don't know if you know this about me.
I didn't say it was bad. It's just new. It's
yeah. I mean, everybody's got their different takes and tastes and things. But let's hear what you liked about the match.
Well, you know, I'm just so weird in that I don't have all the baggage that you guys have with stuff like this.
Very true.
It's all like, I don't want to say fresh and new because I know aspects about this story, but I've never seen this before. So it's sort of like a childlike thing, right? Like I'm fairly, fresh and innocent when it comes to stuff like this. So I don't
have the advantage of not being disappointed, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like
you haven't had a chance to be jaded.
Yeah.
How bad can it be? I mean, if it sucks, it's not like, well,
yeah.
A match I watched in the middle of the day on a Thursday. It sort of loses some of that, I guess, luster devoid of its context and trappings of the time period and the storyline.
For me, it's Sting's intensity because as soon as he gets in the ring and his eyes are just laser focused on Hogan. He has no expression on his face. And it's this like coiled up tension, that he is just waiting, like it's been so long and he's just so focused on this. And I'm not a huge Hogan fan, but I thought Hogan was pretty good in this. He was actually bumping around pretty well. I mean, he was messing with the crowd a lot, he was healing it up, and I was enjoying it. I don't typically enjoy Hogan matches that much either, but this was working for me. And it looks like Sting's like steady intensity was unnerving Hogan a little bit, like making him a little bit shaky. So he would, turn to the crowd to pander to them or do something to like deflect from that focus. I don't know. That's just the way I saw it. But
Follow you.
And then at one point he does the little NWO I don't know what the name of that.
The little crotch chop.
The little crotch chop move. And that was pretty sassy. That was like the ice breaking a little bit from this, like, pretty, I'm trying to think of a word, like, besides intense but just detached. There's the word. Like, intense, but detached.
Seeing the emotion finally come out of Sting again for the first time.
And it was subtle. It was not a huge thing that he did, but he did it right to Hogan's face. And
showed a little personality.
Yeah, it was a little something in there. Hogan sits him on the railing on the outside there and crushes his nuts, and then does another low blow in the ring. So that was dirty. Thanks for that, Hogan. But the ending though.
Which one?
The leg drop. The leg drop ending there. I was
oh my God, Nick Patrick.
Nick Patrick.
Your favorite Nick Patrick, right?
If there's anybody, is he still alive? Nick Patrick? He's still alive? Okay. He needs a podcast. I would listen to him and Conrad talk about shit like this.
That's not a bad idea. Nick Patrick's not a bad talker to be.
I would like to hear his take on this finish because I have my theories on the whole thing. But yes, it was. And don't forget, I said it wasn't going to happen again. It's not going to happen again.
All right. So then Bret Hart comes out.
Yeah.
And tell me why Bret Hart comes out.
Oh, that's a great question.
I was like, why?
I've been asking myself that since December of 1997.
So I think Bret Hart coming out made sense to Greg and to a lesser extent me at the time watching it. Just in in theory, it was going to make sense because this show is following on the heels of WWF's Survivor Series 1997. The infamous Montreal screw job, right? So This is the end of Bret Hart's WWF career, and he has just signed with WCW. He's only made a handful of appearances, hasn't wrestled yet, but he's made a couple of appearances on television leading up to this show, Starrcade. Felt somewhat out of place. Would you agree, Greg?
Yes. Naturally, the best way to use the guy who is the hottest wrestler in the business, coming off of this probably since the NWO creation in terms of like generating buzz, is to bring him on and make him the guest referee for a match between Eric Bischoff and Larry Zbyszko, I believe it was.
That's right.
Just before this. And so the Hitman was on this show as a guest referee. And so the idea that they were going for with the finish, the plan for the finish, was Hogan was going to hit the leg drop on Sting.
Yeah.
He's going to get the cover, and Nick Patrick is going to deliver the other aspect of this. There's another backstory here, another layer to this. Nick Patrick, in the past, was an evil referee.
Yes.
Who was in the pocket of the New World Order.
Yes, I did know
and
that.
Throughout 1997, Nick Patrick had been trying to earn his way back into WCW's good graces to prove that he was no longer aligned with the New World Order or the New World Organization.
He turned twice in the course of this storyline for some reason.
Yes.
So he landed in the NWO's pocket like kind of early after their formation, going back to 96. And he was like the heel NWO favoring referee. Then he didn't he turn face at like the same show that DiBiase did. Was it Great American Bash 97 where Nash is dropping Rick Steiner on the turnbuckle over and over, and Ted DiBiase can't take it, and he retreats to the back, and he's abandoned the NWO, and I think that's where Nick Patrick kind of turned face again as well. But then later on in the year, he's acting a bit more heelish, and it's like, didn't we already do this story? It was just very
and so there were so many storylines going into this match around it, and one of them was, can we trust Nick Patrick?
Right.
Nick Patrick's been assigned to officiate this match. Can we trust him, or is he going to go NWO again? And the idea was,
if there's a question around that, then he shouldn't even be
the official
under consideration at all.
Right,
if there's any question at all of biased officiating, but whatever.
And so the idea was going to be that he was going to do a fast count on Sting's shoulders and signal for the bell, and then Brett was going to come out, having just been screwed by an official the month before in the Survivor Series. He was going to come out, and he as an appointed official by World Championship Wrestling and the executive committee under the authority of James J. Dillon, he was going to come out and stop the match from being ended and reveal that, obviously it was a fast count, it was garbage, and he was going to restart the match. And then Sting was going to make his comeback, put the Hulkster in the Scorpion Deathlock, or sharpshooter, if you will, and the Hitman was going to hear Hogan submit and call for the bell, because the Hitman was going to call things down the middle, unlike Nick Patrick did. Now, of course, as we know, Jenny, from the end of that match, things did not turn out that way, and as a result, Sting looked like an idiot. Bret Hart looked like the biggest idiot in the world. I mean, what? Bret, like you said, why is he out there? A whiner, exactly. Bret Hart is coming out and complaining about a fast count that didn't exist.
He's like suffering vicariously through this match that he is not in.
Yes, in fact, I actually got a recorded comment from former WCW booker Vince Russo on this match. It never happened, bro.
Well said.
Strong
Thanks,
words
Vince.
from Vince Russo.
I think that covers it.
Thanks for joining us. And the whole that one thing, Jenny, really is what happened there with that ending, because Brett was supposed to be the voice of reason, the man to come in and right this wrong that was being committed unto Sting, and instead he comes out and looks like a moron and a whiner, and eventually, as we all know, becomes the guy that sits on the top turnbuckle during giant rambling NWO promos for the rest of 98.
So I'll just throw this out there. There's two things that would have made Bret Hart's involvement actually quite sensible and almost genius, actually. Number one is just simply if Nick Patrick had delivered a fast count rather than a slow fast count, a.k.a. a normal cadence 3 count.
AKA his actual job.
So that Bret Hart actually did have a bitch about this. That would have helped. Number two, what would have helped is if, as rumored, I don't know if there was anything behind this at all. I want to say that Conrad Thompson actually asked Eric Bischoff about it on the podcast they did about this very pay-per-view, their show 83 Weeks. So somewhere out there, it was rumor and innuendo that Earl Hebner was actually, they were trying to get Earl Hebner to officiate this match. And that's why there was all the bullshit leading up to who's going to be the official. It can't be Nick Patrick. Oh, it is going to be Nick Patrick. Well, we can't have that. They were going to get Earl Hebner, or trying to get him, and he was going to essentially recreate the Montreal Screwjob. I think that's a little bit kind of going up your own ass, but in terms of like wrestling viewership logic, it would have made sense for the time. You know, it kind of allows Brett to get a measure of revenge, kind of makes it a little bit too much about Bret Hart, but at the same time,
right.
You're left with the outcome that you wanted of Sting leaving with the title, even though they tried to screw him. You know,
I can even hear the commentary right now. Who authorized Earl Hebner to officiate a World Championship Wrestling match?
Exactly. So I think it would have. I mean, I think people would have been like, "What the hell?" That's maybe if they had announced it like in advance, and it wasn't something that they sprang on you during the show itself, so that you knew going in. You're already expecting there's going to be some kind of shenanigans with the officiating here. If they've got, if they're telling us it's Earl Hebner coming in, they're gonna do a play on the screw job. Yeah. And in a way, that's sort of genius. I don't know how well it would have gone over with just a general audience. Like me watching this, having not seen wrestling regularly for years and years, I don't think I would have gotten it. But at the end of the day, if it's Sting winning the match, walking out with the title, again, they tried to screw him. He overcame the odds. Bret Hart is positioned as another, new big babyface potential first challenger for Sting. I think you've set a lot of things up there, and it could have worked. Certainly, I think that would have been a better approach than Hogan getting a clean pinfall over Sting and then having the decision overturned by Bret Hart, of all people.
Yeah. One of the things that annoys the shit out of me about Nick Patrick is that when he does his count, he flips his freaking wrist the whole time.
Yeah.
And so, like, if you could just, like, not do that, then you might know how to do a fast count, and this might all, like... Imagine.
Maybe you hit upon. Maybe he was physically incapable of
He couldn't do it with this floppy wrist syndrome. I don't know, but...
He has floppy wrist syndrome. He
also
has a problem. Most referees, I've noticed, like most good referees, they start their count as they're going down to the mat, right? Like the hand is up, they see the pin, they go down, they count it just as they are, like, hitting the mat.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, if it's 3. He will hit the mat, then lift the arm, then start. It just kind of seems like it throws everybody off. Like, okay, was him hitting the mat the one count, or has he not started counting it? It is a little bit jarring. It is one of my pet peeves. Also,
I hate it because as a wrestling fan, when you hear that sound of the ref hitting the mat, you naturally want to count along.
Yeah.
Because it's a noise.
Yeah.
It's counting in wrestling is very much an audio thing. You hear the hand hit the mat, and then you count. But if the referee's body hits before the hand hits, it totally throws off the whole cadence and rhythm.
Yep.
But you got to figure it affects the wrestlers too.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, no question. Well, the
because if they're not looking at him, they're like, was that 1 or was that 2?
Yeah.
Well, that's why
we're on 1 or 2. It's kind of important. Right
JR
now.
tells that story about the first time he met Harley Race in the locker room. He was going to be a referee for a Harley Race and Briscoe match and or Dory Funk match, and he's like, he said, and Harley says, "How do you count?" And he makes him get down and show him how he counts. He's like, "Do you count like that every time?" "Oh, yeah, I do." "Well, good." And they go on from there, And so, the central aspect here is there has to be a screw job if you're going to do this finish. If there's no screw job, then and my ultimate point, Tim, is, and keep in mind, yes, this is me. I've not been replaced by another person, another human being. I don't believe that Bret Hart should have been involved in this match at all.
No.
Oh, God.
This was about Hulk Hogan. I know. I can feel dirty even saying that. But this was a match about Hollywood Hogan and about Sting. It was about WCW versus the NWO. It had nothing to do with Bret Hart. And I, even at the time, I didn't like him getting involved here because I didn't understand it. As a kid, I was like, I liked the element to a degree of Nick Patrick and that question of whether he was dirty. But then when it was a clean pin, I'm sitting there with my jaw open. I was like, Sting just got beat.
Yep.
Sting just got beat. We all looked at each other. My friends and I just looked at each other like, what just happened? And then they restart it, and it goes from there. To me, this whole match gets remembered much better. I don't think it's a great match, but I think it gets remembered better if that whole ending is not as botched as it is.
Well, yeah, because once they restart the match and then he wins, it's like a huge moment. Like I was so caught up that I wasn't like super thinking about, wait, what the fuck, with the count. So I was kind of caught up in it, and then, the whole locker room floods out, and they're all in the ring, and he's holding up the belt, and I got a little wispy, and I don't know, it was just very like
amazing moment. Yeah, I agree. It was an amazing moment.
And then Sting looks at the camera and speaks Spanish for some reason.
Yeah.
Like,
now, Tim, I got to hear your theory.
What does he say? He goes, he's something, mamacita.
Mamacita.
Yeah. What is your theory on this, Tim?
Well, it's very simple. You see, what had happened was, this was not Sting. This was not Steve Borden. This was not even fake NWO Sting. This was actually a luchador that was conscripted to take Sting's place. Much like the situation with the Ultimate Warrior in the early 90s, where he died and had to be replaced. Steve Borden did not die, but because he was not physically fit, muscular, or tan enough to really compete here, they had to swap him out and replace him with a luchador who they actually did unmask, but they painted his face, so it wasn't like an unmasking. It was a technicality where they could get away with. We didn't really take the guy's mask off. He can still compete in Mexico under a mask and everything.
Was this the famed luchador Hypnosis that Bret Hart spoke of later?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, a rare appearance by Hypnosis here in WCW. But he also wasn't all that tan either. But compared to Steve Borden, man, you should have seen that pasty son of a bitch backstage.
Oh
they had to pull him out of this. They had to yank him out of that match. Post-haste.
I mean, that's fascinating. I haven't heard a theory that good since the theory of the 3 Shawn Michaelses. I mean, that's intense. Tim.
Hang on, is that real? Is there really a 3 Shawn Michaelses?
Only to one drunken patron of the Hooters in Dothan, Alabama.
Is this like a 3 Joker situation?
Yeah, very much so. In fact, it was even written by Jeff Johns, I think. No, so in the pre-WWE Network days, when people had to go to, you had to pay money to order the pay-per-view, which, as anyone that knows me knows, is just not an option. No. Or you go to the local establishment that would show the wrestling pay-per-views, which in our case, in Dothan, was the Hooters.
Yeah.
And we had a cadre of the most unique people that I've ever encountered in my entire life that would show up to watch these wrestling pay-per-views every month. And a lot of time, you just been people watching. Well, one of these individuals was a sort of middle-aged, hefty white guy that would always show up with his lady friend and his, what I assume was his older brother or his father, who always wore an admiral's hat.
Hard to see.
And had an oxygen tank with them at all times.
Oh my
and they'd
God.
sit there and they'd watch the matches and they'd get all into it and everything, and they'd make noises and holler out and everything. And anyway, he'd go outside to smoke on occasion and stuff. And
with
one
the
day
oxygen tank?
Yeah, well, no, the admiral, as we called him, did not go outside. The admiral stayed at his table, but the other guy, who we would later call Jack Michaels as a result of this conversation, grabs us at one point and begins regaling us about. I believe this was after. This may have been after the Shawn Michaels and Randy Orton match from that Survivor Series where the super kick was banned.
Yeah,
and yeah, really good. And he pulls us aside and he goes, and we were kind of laughing at this guy because he was yelling during the match saying, "You take that, Orton! You ain't gonna like what comes at him at you now." And so we were like, well, I guess that didn't work out too well for you there, did it, huh? And he was like, "Oh, that wasn't Shawn Michaels out there." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And then he told us this theory that he had. It's not theory. No, this was a fact to him. He presented it to us, the 3 Shawn, and Nick Duke can confirm this story. The 3 Shawn Michaels theory. This guy informed us that there are actually 3 individuals that are Shawn Michaels that the WWE will cycle in and out to make sure that their Shawn Michaels stay healthy. Holy shit. There's Shawn Michaels, the regular heartbreak kid Shawn Michaels that we all know and love, the guy who was famous in the 90s. But since he came back from the back injury, there were also 2 other Shawn Michaels that were actually brothers of his. There was Jack Michaels, who was the Shawn Michaels that was wrestling Randy Orton that night. That was Jack Michaels. And Jack Michaels...
Okay, wait, I got to stop you.
Okay,
I'm sorry. Is he just making up these names as a way of keeping track of them, or does he think that their names are actually Shawn Michaels, Jack Michaels, whoever?
I'm pretty sure he wasn't aware that Hickenbottom was a name at all. I think he thinks that these are their real actual names and that they exist, in fact.
So he's not just using these names as a placeholder.
No. These are. He believes he's telling us with conviction that these are real people that he knows. That exist. So he's got insider knowledge that we don't have.
He believes in kayfabe.
We've got Jack Michaels, and Jack Michaels was out there that night. And then he said, once in a while, the third brother will wrestle. And we said, what is his name? And he said, Michael. So Shawn Michaels, Jack Michaels, and Michael Michaels are the three Shawn Michaels. Not a real person. I swear to God. And so forever we called that guy. We never knew that guy's name. We just called him Jack Michaels and the Admiral. And
why didn't you call him Michael Michaels?
Because I couldn't say it without laughing.
Why did they need two auxiliary Shawn Michaels? Why not just one?
I didn't get into I didn't ask him the details of why you would need two backup Shawn Michaels.
What was your response? You were just like, okay.
We were just nodding our heads and smiling.
Oh my God! How do you not engage him in conversation at that point?
I mean, I thought it was going to be a Sting situation where you've got the three faces of Sting or whatever, right? And it's just representing different eras. Like maybe there was Rocker's era Shawn Michaels, and then when he goes singles, well, that's actually Jack Michaels, and then when he comes back from the injury, that's Michael Michaels. Can't even say it. Right? I mean, that's a natural thing.
Yeah, that's what you could do. I mean, hell, what a triple threat match they could have.
Holy shit. Can you imagine the work rate?
Oh, my God.
Because they're all pretty good workers, evidently.
Right. You know, I mean, they've had some good matches between them.
Holy shit.
Michael Michaels lost his hair a little bit, but, you know.
Now you've got me questioning, is my favorite WWF match a Jack Michaels match or a Michael Michaels match?
It could be, because it's not fair to give Shawn credit for the work that Jack or Michael put in. From what he told me, Michael Michaels rarely made appearances. It was usually Jack.
So did Shawn Michaels did he ever come back from the back injury, or was it just his two brothers who were wrestling as him?
I don't know that I ever got it. Nick might be able to answer that better. My memory of that is not as strong as what his explanation was fully about the how that worked. But I want to think that Shawn did wrestle occasionally, but his back was still so badly injured that it was just risking surefire death. And perhaps it was the same deal with Sting, a luchador Sting, that they could send in on occasion because Steve Borden was having the troubles with demons, as often people do in the wrestling business.
Yes, the demons. I can't believe we managed to bring it back to this match somehow.
That was wonderfully done.
No, this match that is the culmination of the biggest rivalry in WCW history, the storyline that hooked more fans than WCW had ever had in its history, and to just fumble the finish like that. Because I can even though I will always be that stupid Sting mark that just wanted him to come in there and destroy Hulk Hogan and just rip him apart limb from limb and no-sell everything and give Hogan the comeuppance he deserved. However, that being said, I think there's something to be said for a more competitive match, similar to, and we talked about this recently, if this match had been more like the one they had on Nitro in '95, it would have been just this knockdown, drag-out affair. But there is also something to the story, and I think, Jenny, you kind of hit on it a little bit, that, Hogan kind of, he cheats and he gets the upper hand in this match, and beats on Sting a lot in this match, crushes his nuts on the guardrail.
Crushes him again in the ring.
Yeah, in the ring, gives him the back rake, the most devastating of all moves. and in the course of this match, what you see is almost he's beating this emo-ness out of Sting, and we get the old Sting in the finishing stretch. It's almost like you see that, Sting suppressing his emotion for so long in this match, and then the crotch chop, you see this emotion come out of Sting, and he fires up at the end, and it looks like 1992 Sting again when he makes that comeback after the Bret Hart situation.
And Hogan sells it for him. He's scared.
The Stinger splash, the scorpion, the clotheslines, the scorpion laying out the NWO as they come in one by one, but yeah, I think there is something to that story. I just think that botched screw job ruins it to a degree, and the damned seeing that happen, and so I want to believe. I'll be honest with you that Hogan arranged this whole thing. That he told Nick Patrick, "Look, brother, just count normal." But maybe it was all just a fluke accident because Hogan did bump for Sting in this match and did put him over. The other aspect that I was going to point out that I think would have helped, they weren't doing tap outs yet, I guess, regularly at this point. So you're still doing the guy has to like verbally submit or whatever. And I don't think that's as visually strong because I'll be honest, when we watched it live, I kind of looked at it as Bret screwing Hogan when I watched this.
I mean, the way it plays out is Hollywood Hogan has fought this valiant, dominant match against an undeserving challenger, a guy who's been on the shelf for 16 months. And then, after getting the victorious, clean pinfall win, is screwed over by this interloper, Bret Hart, and his victory is taken from him. Hollywood Hogan, is the one who's been screwed here.
Even if they had done the tap out and Hogan had reached out and like visually tapped the back, that might have helped a little bit to assuage that, to make it obvious that Bret wasn't just saying that Hogan gave up. But I think you brought up a good point, Jenny, about the story of the match and kind of the bringing that out of Sting as it comes along. And seeing how he digs back down and ultimately unseats Hogan. And then, of course, it's inescapable, Tim, that our visions of this match is also shaped by what followed and the fact that they kind of doubled down on the bullshittery coming out of
my God,
all of this, with J.J. Dillon taking the title from Sting and then doing the Super Brawl rematch where, again, Sting can't beat him cleanly.
Yeah, that's even more egregious in a lot of ways.
I agree completely, Tim. Because this at least gives you that feel-good moment at the end.
Yes.
All the baby faces coming in there, Sting and Luger having their big reunion after all this time. It was a great moment.
Somebody had Rey Mysterio up on their shoulders in the corner over there. That was pretty good. I don't know. It's fascinating. It is.
Well, it's interesting because I think this match worked on you, Jenny, the way that WCW intended for it to work on someone.
Right.
I think they just misfired in the sense that was, well, I don't know. I won't even say in the minority because, Greg, you and I are kind of in the wrestling sphere bubble of there's the very conventional, like, smarky wrestling fan take on how this should have gone down, right? You ask anybody in the world, how should this match have gone? And I'm not doing a big rebooking thing here. It's the answer you get is, well, Sting should have squashed Hogan in 3 minutes. Hogan should have gotten no offense whatsoever. Sting destroys him. Stinger splashes, Scorpion death drop, deathlock. It's over. Just like that.
But that's boring. I'm sorry.
I kind of agree with you, and I think the ideal match is somewhere between the two extremes of what they actually did, which did work for you, did work for a lot of people. It's not an opinion that you hear a whole lot on podcasts, on wrestling Twitter, on
good thing I don't know anything about that.
Blogs. You don't hear that a lot, but you only sort of hear the echo chamber, right? Mm. And I'm with you, Greg, and I think that there is something to having a very competitive match here, because the reality is, Sting has been on the shelf for 16 months. He shouldn't be able to come in and just dominate. Yes, he needs to absolutely win in convincing fashion, but you want to have a competitive match. I mean, this is a main event of a pay-per-view, your biggest show of the year, biggest show in the promotion's history.
And Sting's strength has always been in wrestling. Has never been Goldberg. His strength is fighting from underneath, is being the underdog and coming back and winning.
I don't know that Hogan needed to take as much of the match as he did, but you still want to have, I think, a competitive match.
Yeah.
He's Hogan.
I'm sorry. All of this it's all Nick Patrick's fault. Like, just... I mean,
if that part's not
that's
up,
it. That's everything.
Right.
It's everything. Him and his floppy wrist syndrome just fucked up this whole. I mean, he's traumatized these millions of wrestling fans who, like you guys, who have horrible memories of what the fuck with this match, and is undeserved because of Nick Patrick.
And James J. Dillon.
Yeah, him too.
That impotent piece of shit, James J. Dillon. Who I actually sort of miss. As a horrible, useless authority.
And Bret Hart, tangentially. Like,
Of course.
Like, go...
You've gone too far.
I think that, what I think? That this match and this whole outcome, the whole thing, was kind of Terry Hulk Hogan Belea's crowning achievement. Because you have to figure...
Politically, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. This was his Triple H in 2003 moment.
Because you got to figure, his contract is up. Yep. He's just... And I don't know that this was super public knowledge at the time, or even like dirt sheet knowledge. Probably was. But he's just about to sign the biggest contract, like, ever. We've all seen that. It is talent contract porn, that Hollywood Hogan 1998 talent contract with WCW. Please, if you've never seen this, Google. It's very easy to find. Just literally Google Hollywood Hogan 1998 WCW contract. It'll be like the first result. And it is amazing what they are giving this man. They are falling at his feet. It's like a contract that is all but saying, what else can we give you, Mr. Hogan? I love that contract. I can't believe he was able to pull that off. But you figure he's a little bit worried about his spot. Like, I don't know that he's signed this contract yet at the time of this pay-per-view. He probably has. But it's sort of like, well, if they knock me down, and I'm no longer on top, I'm not in main events anymore, it's going to feel like they're not getting their money's worth. Even if I'm, I mean, let's face it, what was Hollywood Hogan really worth in 1998? I mean, in terms of what he did in the ring, not a lot, but he still had that.
Oh, but he still had huge value. No
that
doubt.
name value, absolutely.
More than anyone else, yeah.
And you can't have a guy like that working in the undercard with a contract of that nature. I'm sorry, for as much as 1998 really became like the year of Bill Goldberg in WCW, you look at like where follow the money, right? And by
it's
that
all
logic,
about the money.
the money.
What about the money?
What about the money? So by that logic, Hogan is far and away still your top guy and who you're going to sink your resources into. And he's not going to want to look like a loser. And I think there is something to that. I don't think that it helps us necessarily as viewers and wrestling fans so much.
Or the company.
These are forces very much at odds. But if you're Hollywood Hogan, then, I mean, I can see that being your rationale. And getting in Eric Bischoff's ear, getting in Nick Patrick's ear, whatever.
I'm not saying that I'm not going to do business, brother, but he's not tan.
So we need to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, please.
You had questions, Shitty, about
yes.
the tanness of Sting here.
Yeah, I was like, what does it fucking matter? His face is white.
He's been working in the shadows for months and
I mean,
months.
he's not, I mean,
What's he supposed to be? I know, just for comparison, guys, to prepare for this episode, I actually Googled images of The Undertaker from this same time period.
Mm-hmm.
Not very tanned.
No, it really
In fact,
isn't.
for an undead zombie, he looks pretty good with his pale white skin.
Yeah, kind of convincing. So, I mean, Jenny, you kind of figured it out in all of like 5 seconds of just thinking about it rationally.
You mean I use logic?
You used facts and logic to destroy this. Greg, help me out here. Was this like one of those almost wrestling urban legends for a long time that one of the big reasons that they didn't put Sting over stronger is because, well, he hadn't been in the tanning bed, brother. You know, he doesn't have the look. He doesn't look right. We can't put a guy like it. It was like he didn't really believe.
Yeah. I hadn't heard that one until a few years ago. What I had always heard was that, well, he hadn't been in the ring and he was rusty and he wasn't in physical condition enough. Like he hadn't been working out. I'd heard the working out thing a lot.
Yeah.
But I had never heard the tan thing until like 2-3 years ago when I heard it on 2 different Conrad podcasts. Because I think Hogan brought it up at one point on the Flair podcast when he was on there. And then Eric went of course, had his iconic run with Conrad calling him out on it, which was amazing. And this kind of popped up on me because I was like, okay, even the physical condition one, that one at least I can halfway buy.
Right.
That like, okay, maybe I can understand that to a degree. The tan thing, like, who cares? What does it matter?
Well, and the thing that's so crazy about it is Conrad Thompson on 83 Weeks gave Eric Bischoff the opportunity to just totally shoot that down.
Right.
And Bischoff was like, there was kind of something to that. Yeah. It was like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, well, you have to understand with the boys, you know, they have this mentality and this attitude of you have to have this certain look, and Sting didn't have it. And he's like kind of doubling down on this stupid issue of the tan. And Conrad's like, well, what about his conditioning? Like, what about he hadn't been in the ring so long? Was he rusty? And Bischoff was like, yeah, I don't really know. I hadn't really talked to Sting a lot the weeks leading up to it.
He was in the catering the whole time, so he didn't
and they make it sound like he was this fat ass that came to the ring that just like had this giant gut hanging over, like that GIF that I posted in our group the other day of The Rock like making fun of that fan by like looping his hand over his stomach. Just signify his gut, and so that wasn't the case. I was like, I love Arn to death, but it's not like Arn was built like a Greek god or anything. You know, like what is this? The justification. That's what, honestly, Tim, I'll be completely honest with you. That's what made me buy into the conspiracy theories more than I ever did even before that. Was to hear the explanations, and when the explanations for something are so inherently ridiculous, it makes you believe the conspiracy theory.
Well, and it's crazy. Bischoff starts talking in circles, too, because it's, okay, he's not tan enough. Well, maybe he's rusty. Well, he wasn't working out.
Maybe he had a drug problem.
Couldn't really tell what his physique was because every week he had the trench coat on, so you didn't get a good look at him. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I wasn't really doing my job talking to my talents. But Sting's, playing it very method. He's staying in character, like keeping kayfabe alive. So, of course, he's not hanging around the arena backstage. And so Conrad is just sort of saying, you can, again, giving him the opportunity, just put it all on Hogan. Just say that Hogan got in your ear and said a bunch of shit, and Hogan had creative control, so you sort of just had to go along with it. And I guess Bischoff doesn't want to make it sound like he wasn't the one making the decisions. And
right, he's very sensitive about that, yeah.
Didn't have control, this whole inmates running the asylum thing. So it just goes back and forth between, like, sort of blaming Hogan, but himself,
not.
Saying it was his decision, but
and
not
saying that it was legitimate, like.
Yeah, it's just like, dude, you got played. It's fine.
And then there's that moment where he acknowledges that Nick Patrick, messed up a little bit with the count. And then so Conrad's like, so what's your conversation like with Nick Patrick when he gets backstage? Nothing.
Don't have one.
You don't even talk to him about it? You don't chew him out for fucking up the finish of the biggest match in company history. No, I didn't. I just didn't think it. I didn't view it that way, Conrad.
Oh my god.
So
It's so, and we're looking at this through wrestling fan eyes. Like Jenny, you're probably thinking, who really cares, right? It's at the end of the day, Sting left with
Sting
the title.
wins. Yep.
I mean, I care in that I feel like Nick Patrick doesn't get all the hate that he deserves.
That's fair.
With Nick Patrick, you have to give all the hate you give.
Yes, and so also, what did you guys like when you were watching this? Well, Tim, you weren't because you didn't come back. But like, how long had Sting been doing Crow Sting?
Since September or early October of 1996, so a year and 2 months or so, year and 3 months.
So did he have the same build when he started it? Then,
yeah, I mean, when he started, he was just coming off of being regular Sting that we just saw against Steven Regal.
Okay,
and so yeah, he was probably a little bit bigger then. He did look smaller when he came back, no question.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think I kind of bristle at the fact that, yeah, he did look smaller than he did when he was wrestling a year and a half prior. But again, it's not like he looked like he came out looking like, Bastion Booger or something.
Yeah.
Like he came out, he looked like a wrestler. He looked like he belonged in there with Hogan. He didn't look like he was, a Dustin Diamond doing celebrity wrestling or something.
all right. So I'm gonna ask the question that I guess I don't know if I'm like allowed to ask or whatever, but like, what about steroid use? Was that ever?
He was probably, as the term goes, and this is just an assumption. I should mention I don't know Steve Borden's drug history. I will preface that before anyone sues us.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume that he was he had cycled off at this point for quite some time.
All right.
As the saying goes. See, Sting was I don't think he's hidden that. Sting was into steroids certainly in the late 80s and very early 90s, but I think he had kind of curtailed that largely by this point. And I don't know that he really got back into it the rest of his career because he never really bulked back up to his old levels. So, no, I think he was probably off steroids at this point. I think, but by the way, a very similar thing can be seen in Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yes.
Yeah.
In this time. He was not even close to what he looked like in the WWF. But somehow it wasn't an issue when it came time for Savage to have a big program.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, there is something to the fact that Sting had motivational problems when he came back. That's not just Hogan and Bischoff trying to bury the dude. Like,
and he did have a drug issue as well at the time.
By his own admission, yeah, he probably wasn't hitting the weights as hard. He probably had. He was off the gas, maybe not so much because he made the conscious decision not to do that anymore, but he was just a little bit less motivated to have a certain look.
But for me, I think it works with his gimmick. Like with Crow Sting, it's not that big a deal. Like,
Crow Sting being tanned would have been weird, and Crow Sting looking like the old Sting would have been weird in some ways.
It's a different look. It's a different thing, and so whatever the motivations are, or steroids, drug use, not hitting the gym, whatever, it's all fine because it works with his look.
Right. And again, you don't know any of the, because Eric has just admitted that he hasn't talked to Sting much. So how does he know all of this? Second, third-hand knowledge?
Probably.
And besides that, you don't know what's going to happen in the future, but you pull the trigger then, and you see, and if you get 2-3 months in and Sting's not delivering, or Sting's clearly got problems, then you can react then.
Right,
but you gotta.
That's my feeling. Yeah.
You don't just assume the worst from the get-go. It's the same thing that you hear about Raven's push in WCW, which is a fallback excuse because Scott Hall was on way more or just as much stuff as Raven was, and never had an issue with being presented as a featured player. So, I I don't know. I think there's a lot of excuse making going on from Eric in this. And knock on. I'm not going to pile on Eric too much. He brought some of the best wrestling television we've ever seen.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think it's pretty obvious that Eric's kind of full of it on this.
Yeah.
I think
usual.
that Hogan did that very masterful thing of putting a bad idea out there. That is very much to Hogan's advantage in making Eric Bischoff think that it was Eric Bischoff's idea.
Yes.
Ooh, that's smart.
I'm telling you, he's the smartest man, smartest politician. He should have run for president. Shit.
The only man that ever managed to successfully out-politic Triple H.
Oh, my God. This is true. And it's like Hogan is going to drop the title. Yes, he's going to do the right thing, brother. Right? I'm sure he said that. Yeah, I'm going to do the right thing here. It's too little, too late. But Sting's got major problems, and just kind of poisoning the well in a way, just putting that out there, and so that now there's so much less confidence in Sting, even if he didn't have all the personal bullshit going on that he did. Hogan has planted that seed, so we now have an excuse to do a rematch, and the rematch will give us an excuse to do another rematch. And Hogan just keeps that heat, right? And I mean, the logical through line here was just simply they have the match, Sting wins clean, and if there's an issue with Sting and his behavior and his appearance, whatever it is, that's a conversation that takes place, but it's kind of a little too late the night of Starrcade, even the week before Starrcade, to beat around the bush and fuck around and do this weird, he wins, but he looks as weak as possible in the process. It's just there's so much overthought here.
While we're talking about this match, let's talk about that rematch, and we keep alluding to it about how it was even worse. Because you got this high moment, Jenny, coming out of this match where you get this emotional victory for Sting. WCW, it looks like, may have finally put the first nail in the coffin of the New World Order. Well, the next night on Nitro, James J. Dillon comes out and says that as a result of the controversy in the Starrcade finish, that the executive committee has made the decision to strip Sting of the World Heavyweight Championship.
Well, not quite yet.
Oh,
they
really?
Actually, on the Nitro, the night after this, they have a rematch in that main event of Nitro, Sting and Hogan.
Oh, I don't remember this.
Yeah, and the show goes off the air in the middle of the match. And it's one of those, oh my God, what happens? I can't wait to tune. And this is another thing that, really hooked me and got me back into the product was, ending the show mid-match, mid-main event. I had to tune in the next week to find out what happened. And, they really drag it out. I think even like Thunder started up the following week.
That's right. It was the first Thunder. Yep.
And they were like, we're going to show you the footage of what went down in the Sting Hogan rematch. And it was like all show long, just over and over and over, beating this point. And it ended in big schmoz, basically. That's all there was. It wasn't, there was no real controversy like they were playing up. It was a big schmoz finish, like a lot of Nitro main events. Very indecisive. And then it was on Thunder that Dillon holds up James J. Dillon holds up the title, and they go into
and also, that was actually the segment where Sting spoke for the first time in English since he came back as a Crow. Because it was a huge moment. Sting.
Well, this was actually Jack Borden, not Steve Borden, who they.
Well, are you sure it wasn't Borden?
Borden.
It was, yeah.
He grabs the bat and he points it at J.J. Dillon, and he says, after Dillon has taken the title from him, and he says, "You got no guts." And he turns to Hogan and he points the bat at him, and he ominously says, "And you? You're a dead man." And he walks off. So it's like, ooh, cool moment. Everybody was, again, one of those, everybody was talking about it at school moments. Sting talked, and he said something cool. And then they have the match at Super Brawl, and holy shit.
They skip Sold Out. They don't do the rematch at Sold Out. That would have been their next pay-per-view opportunity. It just goes to show how much they really strung you along as a viewer. Very effectively, I will say, as a then young Tim Capel watching WCW again. Well, really for the first time.
And then what happens in the rematch at Super Brawl? But, well, Sting has to rely on help from the Macho Man Randy Savage to defeat Hollywood Hogan.
Oh, boy.
Well, and he also gets his ass kicked once again throughout the entirety. Like Hogan takes about
even more so.
I think it was probably more. I mean, he takes
Hogan
about
just whips his ass in this match.
Yeah, 95% of the match at least.
And Sting's heat level, which had been probably legit the most over wrestler that WCW had ever created, and it really kind of tapered. He was still super popular, but it did not feel the same after that. I remember like he was no longer the coolest thing in wrestling at that point, even though he was still super popular. It kind of killed the mystique of that character for the time being, and
kind of like the Fiend.
Yeah, it's like watching the hottest character in wrestling get kind of like, when you see that
buried on his first album.
Yeah, get treated like shit. And in some ways, that's almost like because at least
God,
the Crow
it really
thing,
is.
At least the Crow thing, like Sting didn't single-handedly come up with this character for like a year and like create all these different elements to the character on his own.
Yeah, luckily the character already existed.
Yeah, exactly.
Scott Hall said, this might be a good idea.
Whereas with Bray Wyatt, like he apparently like literally just sat down in a time that they weren't using him last year and came up with this entire character, had the mask made on his own and all this other stuff, and then you see how it ended.
Yep.
Or not ended. It's still going on, but
that's probably ended.
It's like what a shitty thing. Like as a creator, like you come up with this idea, and it's like, oh, this is what you're gonna do with it. Okay, but I still like him, so we'll see. But yeah, Sting. I don't know, man. It took a long time, and it's a shame. Do you feel the same way, Tim? I feel like if all of this had happened, it would have been ruined anyway by the booking. But if Sting had come back the way that he did in early '99 when he came back. If you remember when he comes back and he's like in great shape and wrestling in this high energy style again, this is when he comes back and he wins the world title from DDP and he wins the presidency of WCW from Ric Flair. And
about that, yeah.
But he was really having great matches again. Maybe that would make this era be remembered a little bit better of the post-Starrcade era for Sting. But when the combination of his own personal issues with the booking issues, that's kind of why it gets tainted in the memory. But Jenny, I'm so glad that you found a match that you liked and found things to like about this match. That's a really interesting perspective to have on the show, and kind of made me re-examine a little bit of my negativity towards this match and what the causes of it are.
Well, I'm glad. See, this is what we do. We talk here and we share things together and, try to make each other see different points of view. That's what I'm here for. And I appreciate you guys showing me these great Sting matches because I was not looking forward to this. And I did not know that I was going to like it. So, we give and we take, right?
I've got oodles more to show you. If we ever do a Sting Part 2 episode, I can easily fill it up.
Yeah, easily could do that. Very easily. Well, I'm glad, Jenny, that you, in your attempt to troll us, you
I trolled myself.
Actually trolled yourself. By choosing a match that you thought we would hate that you ended up actually really enjoying and gave us a lot to talk about. And I'm not going to lie, first time I saw this match, I didn't give a shit about any of that stuff either. I was just thinking, okay, cool. Sting is the World Heavyweight Champion, beat Hollywood Hogan. Sting is back. I am back watching wrestling. All things are good in the world. Mm-hmm. And it was later that wrestling fans smartened me up and told me why it was so terrible.
Yeah.
Isn't that funny how that happens where you like something and then somebody tells you
and
that
then people tell you how terrible it is
and that they're a Nazi or something like that, and so You're like, oh, well, I did like them, but I can't like them anymore because they're a Nazi. So I like
Well,
stupid.
they just have to play podcast Ric Flair for you. Oh, he's a Nazi. Don Harris is a Nazi. Yeah, always was. Dick Murdoch lynched the guy. Yeah.
Now, Rick, what about Ron Harris?
Ron Harris also a Nazi. Yeah. Joined the KKK in 1992. I was there. Just kidding. But yeah, no, he did. Hey, and Mr. Fuji fed a guy his dog as a rib.
Rick, you can't say things like that.
I just did.
Rick, what were your thoughts when you lost the presidency to Sting on WCW Nitro?
I said, when do we get to the bar after the show? I didn't want to deal with Eric at that time. I said, hey, who wants to deal with these headaches? I'm just going to go to the bar with me and Gene and Robbie Rage and Kenny Chaos. Drinking at the bar.
Robbie Rage and Kenny Chaos.
Rick.
Well, yeah, this was an enlightening episode of the show. I feel
spirited.
I feel like we gained appreciation for Sting.
Lengthy as well. But
yeah,
good.
But when you're talking about a subject like Sting, you have to have a lengthy episode because he deserves this appreciation. This there has been a amongst the wrestling intelligentsia, there has been an anti-Sting sentiment at times over the years, and I've bristled at it. And I still bristle at it, and I will always bristle at it because there's still that 4-year-old boy inside of me that was inspired to keep going, to fight through obstacles because of Sting, because I saw this superhero before my very eyes every single week on TBS, the Superstation, and later on TNT, the Ultra Station, and yeah, so Sting's awesome. Childhood hero, and we got 3 very different styles of Sting in this episode and 3 different matches, which I think that kind of just worked out through happenstance. So we got 3 totally different styles of matches from Sting.
Yeah, I like the representation here, and I would definitely like to do it again. I mean, we could do many Sting episodes, to be honest with you. We could look at just the Surfer Sting, 3 matches from Surfer Sting era. We could do intermediate Sting. Yes. We could do Crow Sting. God help us, we could do Wolfpack Sting.
Is he hot?
We could try.
Is he as hot as Emo Sting?
I'll be honest with you. Wolfpack Sting has a pretty fucking awesome look, but there's just not many awesome matches in that era.
Yeah, I would definitely like to get your take on Wolfpack.
He looks a little bit like Darth Maul, actually.
Does he have spikes on his head?
No, but I forgot he did grow a goatee, didn't he, Greg?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. That looked somewhat interesting.
But yeah, the intermediate Sting has a match in particular from Nitro that was like, I want to say it was like a triple threat match or something that was like Sting and Luger versus the Steiners versus the Road Warriors. It's awesome, like really awesome. I may have had the participants mixed up in there somehow, but I just remember it being this awesome match where they just keep no-selling stuff, and it's just fun to watch because it's just like 6 dudes just no-selling moves to each other.
I'm into it. All right, well, who's picking our next subject?
Whose turn is it?
I don't even know. What was our last episode? Who was our last episode on?
It was Rick Rude. I picked him.
Greg, you are up. Do you have anyone yet? If you don't, it's fine. But
I was thinking about this over the course of the episode, actually, because I thought it may be my turn, but I wasn't 100% sure. And then something put it over the top. Something in our Starrcade 97 conversation, actually, put it over the top. And it was a little bit of slander, I have to say. A little bit of a slander towards
Don't do it.
A Canadian hero.
Don't do it.
What?
A Canadian national hero.
No, you're not.
And so as a result, our next episode is going to be about maybe the greatest stretch of wrestling in the history of our great sport. Our next episode is going to be about WCW Bret the Hitman Hart.
Oh my God,
Jesus.
you did it.
Oh my God.
You want
Wow.
to troll me, Jenny? I can troll with the best of them.
See, I threatened to do this, and I was sincere about it. And Greg, you fell on the grenade this time.
Hey, man, when it's Bret Hart, I'll fall on 1,000 grenades.
I actually really love this.
If I walk up in here next month talking about I love some Bret Hart, I'm canceling this podcast.
No, WCW Bret Hart is totally different from WWF Bret Hart, Jenny.
Okay.
I mean, he looks completely the same, but
Yes.
it's, oh my God.
The greatness is indifferent. It's different. It's different.
Okay. Well,
I low-key love WCW Bret Hart.
that makes me feel better.
WCW Bret Hart is a guy who clearly has no desire whatsoever to be at his job. WCW Bret Hart is a microcosm of how all of us feel in our daily,
Yes, he's
daily
like anyone.
lives.
That's their job.
And it's obvious.
Huh.
And yet, in spite of this, through his bitterness at his lot in life, there are moments of greatness that shine through.
Mhm.
And I'm going to find some of those, or maybe I'll find the opposite.
All right.
All right. Wow. We are really going to do this. All right.
All right.
So, concluding our episode on Sting, we will be talking WCW Bret Hart in
My
our
two
next.
favorite wrestlers of all time back to back. Can
Back
you
to
believe it,
back.
Tim?
Holy crap. You are so spoiled. Look at this.
You are spoiled.
Jenny, take us home, dear.
Well, I don't know. I love this episode. I love talking about this stuff with you guys, and you can find me on Twitter to tell me how great Sting is at Jenny Position, and on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Jenny Position, and a couple of episodes that are on the feed now include me and you, Tim, on Talk'n Pop
right.
with Scott Criscullo. We talked about BH 90210, the reboot. So that was a really fun episode, Talk'n Pop.
Yep.
And there is a Freak Out Drive-In with Andy Atherton where we watched Zombieland, the first one. And the second one comes out this weekend. So it's kind of a timely release there. And then coming up, I have a new project. So it's something, a type of podcasting I've never done before. It's called Telling Stories, and it's produced by me, and it's where I read a story, and it's really, really good. I really enjoy it. I enjoy making it, and I'm excited for people to hear it. So that'll be next week. What about you
Very
guys?
creative. Well, you can find me, Tim Capel, on the aforementioned Talk'n Pop. It has not been canceled. It is just now on a new network. That is the aforementioned Jenny Position. Still going strong on Talk'n Pop every single month. I am also 1/4 of the Marvel Age podcast. That is still on Place to Be Nation Pop. I think I promised another episode taking place on 1972. That had to get pushed out a little bit, but still planned, still coming out. Look for it, I would say, in November, getting that back on track. You can find me on Twitter at Cyke68, CYKE68. And that's all from me.
I am, of course, one half of the Hard Traveling Fanboys, the longest weekly episodic comic book podcast in all of Place to Be Nation. And we are into the 180s now on our podcast, and
Wow.
we're on the trek towards 200. And once we get through Walking Dead month, we got one more episode of Walking Dead month after the latest episode, which we plugged earlier. And that is theoretically going to be a review of the next volume of the Walking Dead comic book, if I can stomach myself to read it. And we will see if that happens. And then past that, we get into November, where we have some cool stuff. We'll have another episode planned of our watching the show where we watch all the bad comic book movies and talk about them, Fix It or Nix It. We may have another Secret Origins episode. We haven't decided yet. And then December is going to be dedicated to Arrow as that show wraps up its final season We'll be talking all about that show throughout the month of December. And into the new year, we'll have some changes on the show after February. We're going to just kind of maybe change formats a little bit and not be quite as weekly, possibly. But we'll talk about that later when the time comes. And the other aspect is of my life is there's nothing else going on. So there's nothing else of interest. So follow me on Twitter.
Great news.
GPhillips8652, GPHILLIPS 8652. I tweet on there a lot. You can join the Place to Be Nation Comics Facebook page if you're into comic books and comic bookery. And other than that, check out all my friends and their great podcasts right here on Place to Be Nation. Boop.
All right. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. There are definitely 3 of us and 3 Shawn Michaels.
I call Michaels.
Jack
I call Jack
Michaels.